Tonight, we're diving into the full story of the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Cloak of Invisibility. There are a few important threads to follow, but I'll keep the pacing soft so you can still drift off comfortably. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. Imagine, if you will, a long and winding road, shrouded in the low, clinging mists of a twilight that seems to stretch on forever. Imagine 3 travelers, brothers by blood and bound by a shared mastery of the magical arts, coming upon a river too deep to wade and too dangerous to swim. In the world of wizarding legend, this is where our story begins. It is a story that has been whispered to children in their nursery beds for centuries, tucked away within the pages of the Tales of Beedle the Bard. But as we will discover tonight, the line between a children's fairy tale and the cold, hard reality of magical history is often thinner than a silver thread. The Deathly Hallows represent the ultimate ambition of the wizarding world. They are 3 objects of such immense power and profound mystery that they have driven men to madness, sparked centuries of bloodshed, and obsessed the greatest minds of every generation. To possess one is to be a wizard of extraordinary standing. To possess all 3 is to become something else entirely. According to the legend, the one who unites the wand, the stone, and the cloak becomes the master of death. But what does that truly mean? Is it the power to live forever, or is it something far more subtle, far more human, and far more terrifying? We begin with the first brother, Antioch Peverell. He was a man of combat, a man who believed that power was the only currency worth holding. He asked for a weapon that could never be bested, a wand that would ensure his victory in every a tool that would reflect his own perceived invincibility. And so, the Elder Wand was born, 15 inches of elder wood, with a core of the sexual tail hair, a substance that can only be handled by those who have truly understood death. It is the Wand of Destiny, the Death Stick, a weapon that has left a trail of bodies across the pages of history. It is a wand that demands a master who is willing to take it by force, creating a cycle of violence that spans 1,000 years. Then there is the second brother, Cadmus Peverell. His heart was not filled with a desire for conquest, but with the heavy, suffocating weight of grief. He wanted to undo the one thing that magic had always been powerless to change. He wanted to bring back those who had been taken by the veil. He asked for the power to recall others from death, and he was given the Resurrection Stone. It is a small, unassuming black pebble, yet it carries a burden heavier than any mountain. It is a cruel gift, for it does not truly bring the dead back to the warmth of the living. It only brings back their shadows, their echoes, leaving them caught in a cold, grey limbo that is neither life nor death. It is an object that promises comfort, but delivers only a deeper, more agonizing longing. Finally, we look to the third brother, Ignotus Peverell. He was the youngest, and perhaps the wisest, for he was the only one who did not seek to challenge death or to undo its work. He simply wished to walk his own path, unseen and unhindered, until he was ready to move on. He asked for a way to hide, a way to go forth from that place, without being followed by the shadow of his own mortality. He was given the Cloak of Invisibility. Unlike the common cloaks in the modern era, which fade and tear and lose their charm over time, this cloak was perfect. It was a true mantle of concealment, a shield that never faltered, and a hideaway that never failed. It is the only Hallow that was passed down not through murder or madness, but through love and heritage, from father to son, for centuries. Tonight, we are going to look past the nursery rhyme. We are going to look at the Peverell brothers not as characters in a book, but as the incredibly talented, perhaps dangerously ambitious wizards they likely were. We will examine the theory proposed by Albus Dumbledore that these 3 men did not meet a hooded figure on a bridge, but rather created these objects themselves, pushing the boundaries of magical science further than anyone had ever dared. We will trace the bloody path of the Elder Wand from the hand of Antioch through the dark corridors of time, into the possession of the wandmaker Gregorovitch, the dark wizard Grindelwald, and eventually, the greatest headmaster Hogwarts has ever known. We will delve into the tragedy of the Resurrection Stone, exploring how it became a cursed heirloom of the Gaunt family, a symbol of a fallen dynasty that eventually caught the eye of a young Tom Riddle. We will see how its power was twisted into a Horcrux, and how its discovery nearly cost Albus Dumbledore his life. And we will follow the quiet, steady journey of the Cloak of Invisibility as it traveled through the Potter lineage, hidden in plain sight, until it was delivered to a young boy with a lightning-shaped scar on his first Christmas at school. The Deathly Hallows are more than just powerful artifacts. They are a reflection of the human soul. They represent our three greatest impulses: the desire for power, the inability to let go of the past, and the simple wish to live a long, peaceful life. The mystery of the Hallows is not just about where they are or how they work, but about why they exert such a pull on the hearts of men. Why did Dumbledore, a man of such wisdom, spend his youth chasing them? Why did Voldemort, a man who feared death above all else, fail to understand the very objects that claimed to master it? As we move through the history of these three items, we will see how they converged in the life of Harry Potter. We will look at the moment in the Forbidden Forest where the Master of Death was truly realized. It was not a moment of triumph or a display of godlike power. It was a moment of absolute surrender. We will explore the idea that to master death is not to run from it, nor to try to beat it back with a wand or a stone, but to greet it as an old friend and to walk with it gladly. The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Cloak of Invisibility, one to kill, one to bring back, and one to hide. Together, they form a symbol that has become iconic across the world. The vertical line of the wand, the circle of the stone, and the triangle of the cloak. It is a mark that has been worn by seekers and believers, a mark that was once associated with the dark reign of Grindelwald, but which ultimately represents a much deeper truth about the nature of life and the inevitability of the end. Tonight, we are going to break down every detail. We will look at the specific wood and core of the wand, the physical properties of the stone, and the unique magic of the cloak. We will discuss the lineages, the battles, and the quiet moments of reflection that define this saga. We will look at the historical connections that link the Peverells to the Potters and the Gaunts, weaving a tapestry of blood and magic that spans 1,000 years. We will ask the difficult questions: was the wand truly unbeatable, or was its power merely a reflection of its owner's ruthlessness? Was the stone a gift or a curse? And why did the cloak, the simplest of the three, prove to be the most valuable in the end? This is a journey through the deepest lore of the wizarding world. It is a journey into the heart of the forest, into the ruins of ancient homes, and into the very essence of what it means to be a wizard. So let the mists clear, let the river be crossed. We are going deep into the story of the three brothers and the treasures they left behind. We are uncovering the truth of the Deathly Hallows. The story begins long ago, in a time of myth and shadow, but its echoes are still felt in every corner of the magical world. The Hallows are not just relics of the past. They are the keys to understanding the present. They are the ultimate test of character. As we go through each chapter of this history, think about which Hallow you would choose. Would you seek the power of the wand, the comfort of the stone, or the safety of the cloak? Your answer might say more about you than you think. In the chapters to come, we will look at the Elder Wand's long and bloody history, tracing its movement through the hands of those who sought to rule. We will look at the Resurrection Stone's role in the downfall of the House of Gaunt and its final resting place on the forest floor. We will look at the Cloak of Invisibility and how it served as a shield for the Potter family through generations of hardship. And finally, we will look at the union of the three and the boy who proved that the only way to truly master death is to accept it. There is a profound beauty in this legend, a beauty that lies in its simplicity and its devastating truth. It tells us that power is a trap, that grief is a heavy burden, and that a life lived well and ended in peace is the greatest magic of all. But to understand that, we must first understand the objects themselves. We must understand the wood, the stone, and the fabric. We must understand the men who made them and the men who died for them. So settle in. The night is long and the story is vast. We are going to explore every corner of this legend, from the ancient bridges of the past to the final battles of the present. We are going to see how three objects changed the course of history and how one wizard finally broke the cycle. This is the complete, unfiltered story of the Deathly Hallows. The Elder Wand, often called the Wand of Destiny, has a reputation that precedes it in every tavern and library in the wizarding world. It is said that its trail is red with the blood of its previous masters. We will examine the specific mechanics of its allegiance, a concept that even the most skilled wand makers find baffling. Unlike a standard wand, which may develop a bond with its user over years of practice, the Elder Wand is fickle and cold. It follows only strength. It follows the one who has defeated its previous owner. This single trait has led to more tragedy than perhaps any other magical rule in existence. We will look at how this rule was both the salvation and the undoing of those who held it. Then we must turn our attention to the Resurrection Stone. Of the three Hallows, this one is perhaps the most misunderstood. It is often portrayed as a miracle, a way to bridge the gap between this world and the next. But as we will see, the stone is a master of deception. It does not offer life, it offers a mockery of it. We will look at the psychological toll it took on Cadmus Peverell, and how that same toll was felt by Albus Dumbledore centuries later. The stone is a reminder that some doors are meant to stay closed, and that the greatest act of love is sometimes to let go. And we cannot forget the Cloak of Invisibility. It is the most humble of the Hallows, yet it is the only one that truly fulfilled the promise made to its owner. It allowed Ignotus Peverell to live a full life, to raise a family, and to depart this world on his own terms. We will explore why this object, which offers no offensive power and no way to cheat death, is considered by many to be the most perfect piece of magic ever created. We will look at its unique properties, how it differs from cloaks made of demiguise hair, and why it remained hidden for so long. The convergence of these three items in the late 20th century is one of the most remarkable coincidences in magical history, or perhaps it was not a coincidence at all. Perhaps the Hallows have a will of their own, a desire to be reunited when the world needs them most. We will look at the roles played by Gellert Grindelwald and Albus Dumbledore, two men who were united by their quest for the Hallows and eventually torn apart by it. We will look at how their search for these objects shaped the political landscape of the wizarding world and set the stage for the rise and fall of Lord Voldemort. Voldemort's relationship with the Hallows is a study in irony. He sought the Elder Wand to make himself invincible, yet he completely ignored the other two Hallows, even when one of them was literally in his possession. He held the Resurrection Stone, hidden within a ring, and never realized what it was. He was so focused on the power to kill that he forgot the power to hide and the power to remember. We will examine how this blind spot led to his ultimate defeat, and how Harry Potter, by contrast, used all three Hallows not to kill, but to protect. As we go through this deep dive, we will also look at the symbol itself. The triangle, the circle, and the line. It is a symbol that has been carved into the walls of Durmstrang, worn on the neck of Xenophilius Lovegood, and etched into a headstone in Godric's Hollow. We will explore what this symbol meant to different people at different times. A sign of a dark wizard to some, a badge of a visionary to others, and a mystery to most. The story of the Deathly Hallows is a story about the choices we make when we are faced with our own limitations. It is about the temptation to be more than human, and the courage to be exactly who we are. It is a story that begins with three brothers on a bridge and ends with a boy in a forest, but its themes are universal. It is about the fear of the dark and the light we find when we finally stop running. We will spend time tonight looking at the Peverell family tree, seeing how the blood of the brothers flowed down through the centuries, carrying the Hallows with it. We will see how the Potters and the Gaunts are two sides of the same ancient coin, one representing the wisdom of the cloak, and the other the tragedy of the stone. This genealogical connection adds a layer of destiny to the conflict between Harry and Voldemort that many people overlook. It was not just a battle between a hero and a villain, it was the final act in a family drama that had been playing out for a millennium. We will also discuss the physical fate of the Hallows. What happened to them after the Battle of Hogwarts? The wand returned to the tomb of the man who had truly earned its respect. The stone, lost in the leaf litter of the Forbidden Forest, a place where it can do no more harm. And the cloak, kept by the one man who understood that its greatest power was the power to be ordinary. These resolutions are crucial to understanding the message of the story. The Hallows were not meant to be used to rule the world. They were meant to be set aside. This is a long journey we are embarking on tonight. We will take our time, moving through the history, the theory, and the magic at a pace that allows you to really sink into the world. We will look at the illustrations in the books, the descriptions in the lore, and the hidden details that only the most dedicated scholars have uncovered. We will talk about some elder trees, about ancient runes and hidden snitches. We will talk about the summer of 1899 and the spring of 1998. The Deathly Hallows are the ultimate mystery in a world full of wonders. They are the artifacts that bridge the gap between the mundane and the divine. And tonight, we are going to unlock their secrets. We are going to look at the full story, from the first spark of creation to the final moment of peace. We are going to see how 3 objects became a legend, and how that legend became the key to saving the world. As we begin this exploration, let yourself be carried away by the narrative. Let the soft pacing lead you through the corridors of Hogwarts, across the windswept moors of ancient England, and into the heart of the most important story ever told in the wizarding world. The Hallows are waiting. The wand is ready to be drawn. The stone is ready to be turned, and the cloak is ready to be draped over your shoulders. We will start by looking at the origin myth itself, the tale of the 3 brothers, and we will peel back the layers of allegory to find the truth underneath. We will look at the Peverell brothers as men of their time, wizards of unparalleled skill who perhaps didn't realize the legacy they were leaving behind. We will look at the river, the bridge, and the figure of death, and we will ask what they really represent in the context of magical theory. Then we will follow the Elder Wand. We will see it pass from hand to hand, leaving a trail of broken lives and shattered reputations. We will look at the masters who tried to tame it, and the masters who were consumed by it. We will see how it finally came to Dumbledore, and how he tried to use its power for good, only to realize that the wand itself is a trap. We will then turn to the Resurrection Stone, the most heartbreaking of the 3. We will look at its journey through the Gaunt family, a family that clung to the past until it destroyed them. We will look at the moment Voldemort turned it into a Horcrux, unaware of its true nature, and the moment Dumbledore put it on, driven by a desperate hope to see his sister one last time. And we will spend time with the Cloak of Invisibility, the silent guardian of the Potter family. We will see how it protected James and Lily, how it was passed to Harry, and how it served as his constant companion through his years of struggle. We will look at why the cloak is the only Hallow that can truly be called a gift. Finally, we will look at the union of the Hallows. We will see how Harry Potter became the Master of Death, not by collecting the items like trophies, but by understanding their true purpose. We will look at the final duel in the Great Hall, where the Elder Wand finally found a master who didn't want it, and how that choice changed everything. This is the story of the Deathly Hallows. It is a story of magic, of mystery, and of the human heart. It is a story that has no beginning and no end, for as long as there are those who seek power, those who grieve, and those who wish to walk in peace, the Hallows will always exist. They are a part of us, just as much as they are a part of the wizarding world. So let us begin. Let us step onto that ancient bridge and see what awaits us on the other side. Let us look into the shadows and find the truth. The story of the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Cloak of Invisibility is about to unfold. It is a story of 3 brothers, 3 objects, and one final, perfect choice. As we move forward, we will also consider the cultural impact of the Hallows within the wizarding community. How many young witches and wizards grew up believing the story was nothing more than a fable? How many, like Xenophilius Lovegood, spent their lives searching for proof that the Hallows were real? We will look at the divide between the skeptics and the believers, and how that divide mirrors the larger themes of the story. The Hallows are a test of faith, a test of what you are willing to believe in when the world is at its darkest. We will also the specific magical properties that set the Hallows apart from other artifacts. The Elder Wand is not just powerful, it is sentient in a way that other wands are not. It has a memory and a will. The Resurrection Stone does not just summon spirits, it creates a bridge between dimensions. The Cloak of Invisibility does not just hide the wearer, it shields them from the very gaze of death itself. These are not ordinary charms or enchantments, they are fundamental shifts in the laws of magic. And we will look at the role of Albus Dumbledore as the ultimate historian of the Hallows. He was the one who pieced the puzzle together, the one who realized that the Peverells were the key to everything. We will look at his letters, his memories, and his final conversations with Harry, seeing how he guided the young wizard toward the truth without ever forcing him to take the path. Dumbledore understood that the Hallows are a burden that must be chosen, not a prize that can be given. The story of the Deathly Hallows is a story of redemption. It is the story of how a young man, burdened with the weight of the world, found a way to transcend his circumstances and become something more. It is a story that reminds us that even in the face of death, there is hope, and that hope is the greatest magic of all. So, as we dive into the details, as we look at the dates and the names and the spells, remember the heart of the story. Remember the three brothers on the bridge. Remember the choices they made. And remember that in the end, the greatest power is not the power to rule or the power to return, but the power to move on. This is the journey we are on tonight. This is the full story of the Deathly Hallows. There is a symbol that appears in the margins of old wizarding texts, scratched into ancient stones, and whispered about in dark corners. It is a triangle, a circle, and a single line, simple enough to draw with a finger in the dirt, yet carrying a weight that has shaped the course of magical history. But what does it mean? And why has it haunted the wizarding world for centuries? The answer lies not in a spellbook or a prophecy, but in a story. A story so old it was once told to children before they fell asleep. A nursery rhyme about three brothers and a river crossing. Yet that same story would become an obsession for some of the darkest wizards who ever lived. The legend of the Deathly Hallows began as a fairy tale. It was recorded in a book called A Collection of Wizarding Folklore that most parents dismissed as harmless entertainment. The tale told of three brothers who cheated death himself, and in return received three wondrous objects: a wand that could never be defeated, a stone that could summon the dead, and a cloak that made the wearer truly invisible. To most, it was just a story, but to a few, it was something far more dangerous. They began to wonder, what if the objects were real? What if the legend was not a myth, but a hidden history? And what if possessing all three could make someone the master of death? That is how the symbol of the Hallows first appeared in the wizarding world, as a mark of those who sought the truth behind the fairy tale. It was carved into the tombs of ancient families, inscribed in old copies of Beadle's book, and passed in secret among those who believed. Over centuries, the nursery rhyme transformed into a quest. Dark wizards such as Grindelwald became obsessed with finding the Elder Wand, the first and most powerful of the three artifacts. They saw the Hallows not as a children's story, but as a path to immortality and dominion. The symbol itself became a kind of code, a way for seekers to recognize one another, and for the faint of heart to know they had stumbled into something far older than Hogwarts itself. And so the three artifacts entered the dark undercurrent of magical history. The Elder Wand, made of elder wood with a core of the Strel hair, was said to be unbeatable in any duel. It was a weapon that demanded conquest, passing from wizard to wizard through murder and betrayal. The Resurrection Stone, a smooth black stone engraved with the same triangular symbol, could bring back the shades of the dead, but only as cold, sorrowful echoes of who they once were. And then there was the Cloak of Invisibility, the only one of the three that seemed to offer protection without corruption, a garment that never faded and could conceal its wearer from even the most powerful detection spells. Each of these objects carried a heavy price, and the history of their owners is a trail of grief, greed, and despair. But the real mystery is not just in what they could do, it is in how the legend itself endured, how it grew from a bedtime story into a dangerous obsession that would grip the greatest wizard of the age, Albus Dumbledore, and eventually lead to the final confrontation with Lord Voldemort. The triangular symbol you see today is more than a simple drawing. It is the shadow of the Hallows, a mark left behind by centuries of longing and loss. And to understand why it matters, we must go back to the beginning, to the very moment when the three brothers met death on a riverbank, and the story that changed everything began. That story is called, and it holds secrets far deeper than any fairy tale has a right to keep. The enduring mystery of that triangular symbol has haunted the wizarding world for centuries, but its true power only begins to reveal itself when we turn to the one story every magical child knows by heart. The Tales of Beadle the Bard is not merely a collection of bedtime fables. It is the vessel that carries the legend of the deathly Hallows from whisper to obsession. Within its pages lies the tale that would shape the fates of generations, and that tale begins with three brothers who shared a name that would echo through time: the Peverells. The story tells us the brothers once found themselves at a treacherous river. The waters were dark and swift, and crossing them meant braving currents that could swallow even the strongest swimmer. But the brothers were wizards, and they used their magic to conjure a bridge. They stepped across the churning torrent as if it were nothing more than a garden stream, and there on the far bank they met Death. Death was not pleased. The legend says that Death felt cheated, that the brothers had outwitted the natural order by crossing safely, and so Death pretended to congratulate them. He offered each brother a gift of their choosing as a reward for their cunning. But here is the hidden irony that gives the tale its teeth. Those gifts were not rewards at all. They were traps, carefully baited for each brother's deepest desire. The first brother, Antioch, was the most ambitious. He asked for a wand more powerful than any other, a wand that could never lose a duel. And so Death fashioned the Elder Wand from a branch of Elder Tree, with a core of thestral tail hair. The wand was given, but the cost was sealed. The second brother, Cadmus, was driven by loss. He had loved a woman who died before they could marry, and he begged Death for the power to bring her back. Death took a stone from the riverbank and offered it as the Resurrection Stone, a stone that could summon the shades of the dead. But those shades would be cold and distant, never truly alive. The third brother, Ignotus, was the wisest. He did not ask for power over others or over death itself. He asked only for a way to hide, to walk through the world unseen, so that death could never follow him. And so Death gave him the Cloak of Invisibility, a cloak that would never fade, that could shield him from even the eyes of death. Now, if you know the tale, you know what happened next. Antioch boasted of his wand, and that very night, a jealous wizard slit his throat and took the wand for himself. The Elder Wand began its bloody journey through history, passing from hand to hand in violence. Cadmus summoned his lost love, but the shade that appeared was a hollow mockery, and he could not bear the separation. He took his own life to join her in death, never understanding that the stone could only offer a ghost of what was gone. Only Ignotus understood. He wrapped himself in the cloak and lived a long, full life. When he finally reached old age, he greeted death as an old friend and passed on peacefully. But the deepest truth, as Albus Dumbledore would later reveal, is that the real story is even more powerful than the fairy tale. The three brothers, Antioch Cadmus and Ignotus Peverell, did not receive these objects from death. They created them. They were immensely skilled wizards, perhaps among the most talented of their age, and they crafted these Hallows with their own hands. The legend of death giving them was just that, a legend, that the objects themselves were real, and they carried with them the ambitions and flaws of their creators. Antioch's need for dominance forged a wand that feeds on conflict. Cadmus's grief forged a stone that only deepens grief. Ignotus's humility forged a cloak that offers true sanctuary, and that is the irony that runs through every generation. The most dangerous object is the one we reach for in pride, and the only one that brings peace is the one we reach for in wisdom. So when you hear the tale of the three brothers, remember that it is not simply a story of magic and death. It is a story about the choices we make when faced with our own mortality. The Peverell Bloodline carried that legacy forward, threading through the ages, and it touched the lives of two boys who would one day meet in a graveyard, one wielding a wand of elder, the other holding a wand of holly. But that is a story for another chapter, one that follows the threads of Ignotus and Cadmus through centuries of hidden ancestry, waiting to be pulled. And so the tale of the three brothers, as passed down through generations of wizarding families, has always carried an air of the mythical, a story whispered to children before bed, a cautionary fable about the dangers of trying to outwit death itself. But what if the figures behind that story were not just characters in a fairy tale, but real people? People who lived, breathed, and left their mark on the history of magic in ways that would echo for centuries. The three brothers have names, and those names are recorded in the oldest genealogies of the wizarding world. Their surname is Peverell, and the three brothers are Antioch, Cadmus, and Ignotus. These were not mere legends. They were members of a powerful and ancient magical family, a family whose bloodline would eventually flow into two of the most significant houses in wizarding history, the Gaunts and the Potters. But before we trace that lineage forward, we need to step back and understand who these three brothers truly were. In the quiet, sleepy village of Godric's Hollow, you can find physical evidence of their existence. It's a place steeped in magical history, where the very stones seem to remember the past. Among the ancient graves in the churchyard, if you know where to look, you can find a tombstone marked with a symbol that has fascinated and puzzled historians for centuries. It's the symbol of the deathly Hallows. That tombstone belongs to Ignotus Peverell. The date of his death suggests he lived a long life, dying of natural causes in the early 13th century. And that is significant, because according to the legend, Ignotus was the only brother who escaped death's pursuit. He used the Cloak of Invisibility to hide from death until he was ready to meet him as an old friend. The grave of Ignotus Peverell in Godric's Hollow is not just a tourist attraction for the curious. It is an archaeological anchor, a point in time that confirms the existence of this family. And when you look at the evidence, the pieces start to fit together in a way that moves beyond mere myth. The Peverell family were known for their exceptional magical prowess, their innovative, some would say reckless, approach to spellcraft. They were not content with simply following the traditions of their time, of what magic could do. This is where Albus Dumbledore's theory becomes crucial. Dumbledore, in his later years, came to believe that the three brothers did not receive their gifts from death. He saw the story for what it was, a fairy tale, a beautiful, poignant but ultimately fictional explanation for the creation of three extremely powerful magical objects. Dumbledore's theory was that Antioch, Cadmus, and Ignotus were simply brilliant, dangerous innovators. They were wizards of such extraordinary skill that they managed to create artifacts that had never been made before and have never been replicated since. The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Cloak of Invisibility were not given to them by a personified entity. They were invented, forged through immense magical effort and perhaps a touch of hubris. Antioch Peverell, the eldest, was said to be a duelist of unparalleled ambition. He wanted a wand that could never be defeated, a weapon that would make him invincible, and so he poured his knowledge and power into crafting the Elder Wand, a wand made of elder wood with a core of thestral tail hair, a substance associated with death and the unseen. It was a wand of immense power, but its nature was as treacherous as its core. Because the wand's allegiance could only be won by defeating its previous master, it set in motion a cycle of violence that would stretch across centuries. Antioch's own fate was a grim testament to this. He was killed in his sleep, his precious wand stolen from his grasp. The very thing he created to protect him became the instrument of his downfall. Cadmus Peverell, the second brother, was different. His heart was burdened by loss. He had loved a woman who died before her time, and he could not accept her absence. He turned his magic inward, seeking a way to bridge the gap between the living and the dead, and he succeeded in a way. He created the Resurrection Stone, a stone that could summon shades of the departed. But as Cadmus soon discovered, the stone did not bring back the dead in any true sense. It only summoned pale imitations, echoes that were cold and distant, forever trapped between worlds. The woman he loved came back, but she was not truly alive. She was a shadow, and her presence only deepened his despair. Unable to bear the half-life he had created, Cadmus took his own life, hoping to join her in death. The stone that was meant to reunite him with love only drove him further into solitude and madness. And then there was Ignotus, the youngest brother. He was the wise one, the one who understood that death cannot be cheated, but it can be delayed. He did not seek power over others, nor did he try to reverse the natural order. He simply wanted to live his life on his own terms, to walk through the world without being noticed when he chose not to be. He created the Cloak of Invisibility, and unlike any other invisibility cloak, before or since, his cloak was permanent. It would never fade, never be penetrated by spells. It offered true concealment, not just from sight, but from the prying eyes of fate itself. Ignotus lived to a ripe old age, and when he finally died, it was because he was ready. He passed the cloak down to his descendants, and that lineage eventually led to the Potter family. Harry Potter would inherit that very cloak, the same one that Ignotus had crafted so many centuries ago. So when we look at the Peverell brothers, we are not just looking at characters in a story. We are looking at three wizards who shaped the course of magical history, each in their own way. Their creations were not mere magical objects. They were extensions of their own personalities, their desire, their flaws. The Elder Wand, born of ambition, led to endless conflict. The Resurrection Stone, born of grief, led to desperation. And the Cloak, born of wisdom, led to a life well lived. The legend of the three brothers may be a fairy tale, but the truth behind it is far more compelling. It is a story of human ambition, love, and the search for meaning. It is a story that would be passed down through the ages, not just in the tales of Beedle the Bard, but in the very bloodlines of the wizarding world. And as we think about the three brothers and their creations, we cannot ignore the symbol that binds them all together. That triangular mark with the circle and the line is more than just a diagram. It is a key. In the next chapter, we will decode that symbol and uncover what it truly means to be the master of death. The answer is not what you might expect. The symbol itself appears first, not in a dark wizard's lair, but on a headstone in Godric's Hollow, Ignotus Peverell's grave. If you visit the oldest corner of that churchyard, still bears the mark that would later become a source of fear and confusion. A triangle, a circle, a straight line. Three simple geometric shapes arranged in a pattern that seems almost childlike. Yet for centuries, that emblem carried a weight that transcended its simplicity. Drawing seekers and scholars, dark lords and dreamers, all trying to claim what it represented. Let's break down the geometry, because the shapes themselves tell the story. The triangle, it represents the Cloak of Invisibility. Think of a cloak draped over a figure, the triangle suggesting both the shape of the fabric and the protective enclosure it provides. The circle inside the triangle, that is the Resurrection Stone, a perfect, unbroken ring, hinting at cycles at eternity, at the possibility of bringing back what was lost. And the vertical line that bisects both, that is the Elder Wand, straight, unyielding, pointing upward like a command, like a line of power drawn from earth to sky. When you see them combined, you are looking at a visual shorthand for the three objects that, according to the legend, make their possessor the master of death. But why did this symbol come to be associated with dark magic? The answer lies with Gellert Grindelwald. In the early 20th century, Grindelwald became obsessed with the deathly Hallows. He saw the symbol not as a story of humility or acceptance, but as a banner for conquest. He adopted it as his personal mark, scrawling it on buildings, carving it into the flesh of his followers, using it to rally those who believed magical beings should rule over non-magical people. The symbol became synonymous with terror, with the rise of a dark movement that swept across Europe. After Grindelwald's defeat by Dumbledore in 1945, the mark was stigmatized. Few understood its original meaning. Most wizards saw it and thought of bloodshed, of Grindelwald's reign, of the ugly ambition that had driven him to seek the Hallows, not as objects of wisdom, but as tools of domination. So the symbol faded into the shadows, misunderstood, feared, rarely spoken of in polite company. It might have been completely lost to misinterpretation, if not for a few dedicated individuals who refused to let the truth die. One of those was Xenophilius Lovegood, the eccentric editor of the Quibbler, living alone in a strange cylindrical house near the village of Ottery St. Catchpole. Lovegood wore the symbol of the deathly Hallows around his neck as a pendant. To most, it looked like an odd piece of jewellery, perhaps a weird eye or some kind of rune, but for those who knew, it was a statement. Lovegood believed in the literal existence of the Hallows. He was convinced they were real, not just a fairy tale, and he championed that belief in the pages of his magazine, trying to preserve the original meaning of the emblem against the tide of Grindelwald's corruption. Xenophilius understood that the symbol, properly understood, was not about power over others. It was about mastery over death, not through violence, but through acceptance. The triangle, the circle, the line. They were a map to three ancient objects, each with its own lesson. The cloak teaches humility. The stone teaches the pain of loss. The wand teaches the futility of seeking power for its own sake. But Lovegood's crusade was lonely. Most dismissed him as a crackpot, a man who believed in crumple-horned snorkacs and conspiracies. Yet his role in preserving the true meaning of the Hallows is undeniable. Without him, the symbol might have remained nothing more than a dark mark, a scar on magical history. Because of him, a few seekers, including eventually Harry Potter, were able to decode what it truly represented, and so the symbol survived, whispered in secret, hidden in plain sight. It waited patiently for someone to look past the fear and the falsehood, to see the shapes for what they were: a line, a circle, a triangle. Three simple pieces of geometry that, when placed together, tell the story of three brothers, a river, and death itself. But the symbol was only the beginning. The real question is whether anyone would be bold enough to follow where it led, into the quest for the Hallows themselves. The symbol of the deathly Hallows was never just a geometric curiosity. Grindelwald's appropriation of it turned what might have remained an esoteric footnote in wizarding history into a banner that divided the entire magical world. But long before he carved it into the walls of Nurmengard, that symbol meant something deeply specific to a very narrow breed of wizard. To the vast majority of the magical community, it was just a story, and that is the critical distinction we have to understand. Most wizards dismissed the Deathly Hallows as a fairy tale for a very simple reason. Every witch and wizard grows up hearing the tale of the three brothers. It is a nursery rhyme. It is a fable with a moral about humility and the foolishness of trying to cheat death. The existence of an unbeatable wand, a resurrection stone, and an impenetrable cloak sounds exactly like the kind of exaggerated magic that only exists in folktales. Wizarding society, for all its wonder, is deeply practical. They have accurate records. They have the Ministry of Magic regulating artifacts. An invisibility cloak that never fades defies everything they know about the enchantments on such items. So the rational mind says it is a myth, a charming bedtime story designed to teach children not to meddle with the deepest mysteries of life and death. But there have always been those who could not let the myth go, the Hallow Seekers. Their history is a long, tragic, and often maddening trail through the shadows of the wizarding world. For every sensible witch or wizard who studies the Peverell legend as a piece of cultural heritage, there is a seeker who takes it as a literal, actionable blueprint. The madness of the quest is baked into the very nature of the objects. The hunt for the Elder Wand is a hunt for supremacy, and it inevitably ends in violence. The seeker of the Resurrection Stone is motivated by grief, and that grief is twisted into a suicidal obsession. Even the search for the cloak, the most benevolent of the three, has driven people to ransack old estates and desecrate graves, all for the chance to be completely unseen. The quest itself becomes a poison. It isolates the seeker, fills them with paranoia, and offers only the hope of a power that cannot truly belong to them. This brings us to the deepest divide between those who chase the Hallows. It is not simply a conflict between the good and the dark. It is a philosophical schism in the understanding of what the objects represent. On one side, you have the seeker of power. They see the Elder Wand as the ultimate weapon. They look at the Resurrection Stone and see an army of shades, or the secret to a dementorless immortality. They desire the cloak as the ultimate tool for infiltration and escape. Grindelwald was the absolute embodiment of this. He wanted to unite the Hallows, to become the master of death in the most literal, tyrannical sense. He wanted to rule. On the other side, you have the Seeker, who is running away. They are not looking for power over others. They are looking for power over their own fear. They want to conquer death itself. Dumbledore, in his youth, was the perfect example of this. He did not want to enslave the world. He wanted to see his mother and sister again. He wanted the Elder Wand to protect those he loved, to undo the past. This is a much more sympathetic madness, but it is a madness nonetheless. It is the refusal to accept the natural cycle of life and death. Both types of Seeker, the Tyrant and the Mourner, are united by one fundamental flaw. They believe the Grant mastery. They believe death is an opponent to be duelled, cheated, or bargained with. They miss the entire point of the story of the three brothers, which was that death is not an enemy to be conquered through magic, but a natural transition to be accepted. Of all the Hallows, one has a history that is recorded in blood. The other two objects are defined by their obscurity. The cloak hides its master so well that it is almost invisible to history. The stone brings back echoes that cannot truly speak. But the wand, the Elder Wand, leaves a scar on the timeline every time it changes hands. Its story is the most concrete, the most documented, and the most violent of the three. The quest for the Hallows often began with a dream of immortality, but it always seemed to find its sharpest, most brutal expression in the reach for the Wand of Destiny. The Hallow Seekers we followed last time were a varied breed. Some were obsessive scholars, driven mad by the triangular symbol carved into ancient stones. Others were ambitious wizards who dreamed of the Hallows as a path to ultimate power. But of the three objects from the tale, one does not sit idly waiting to be unearthed. The Wand of Destiny, the Elder Wand, it hears the call of conflict, and more often than not, it is the wand itself that chooses the moment of its own passing from one hand to the next. Let us look closely at the physical thing itself, the object before the legend. It is precisely 15 inches long, crafted from a single piece of elder wood. Elder trees have always been steeped in superstition within the magical world, a wood associated with death and with rebirth, powerful magic, but often of a darker and more possessive bent than its cousins. But it is the core that makes this wand utterly unique among its peers. A single strand of hair taken from the tail of a thestral. Think about the audacity of that choice for a moment. A thestral hair as a core is exceptionally rare. Most wand makers refuse to even attempt it, because the thestral is a creature that can only be seen by those who have witnessed death and fully comprehended it. The wand itself is intimately tied to the mystery of mortality. It does not simply perform magic. It commands a deep, primal understanding of the very boundary between life and death. This is the foundation of why the Elder Wand is considered unsurpassable, not merely powerful, not simply strong, but unrivaled in the hierarchy of magical instruments. The Elder Wand does not simply channel a wizard's intent. It amplifies that intent to a degree that leaves other wands feeling hollow. It performs feats of magic that are thought impossible by the standards of ordinary spellcraft. It is less a tool and more a companion in the act of conquest. When a wizard duels with the Elder Wand in hand, they feel a surge of certainty that borders on invincibility. Because the wand itself is feeding back the foreknowledge of victory. It has an ego. It knows what it was made for. But this perfection comes with a brutal, non-negotiable requirement. This is the key to understanding every master the wand has ever known. From Antioch Peverell to the wizard, who holds it at the end of our own story, the Elder Wand's allegiance is not won through sentiment, or through the gentle bonds of inheritance, or even through skill alone. It is won through defeat. The wand demands that its previous master be overcome. It does not care if the master is asleep, or tricked, or struck down from behind, without ever seeing the blow coming. It only recognizes that a transfer of power has occurred. It searches for the victor. This single rule, this terrible contract woven into its very essence, means that the wand is never truly owned. It is merely held in trust by the current champion until the next challenger arrives. The Elder Wand does not have masters. It has temporary custodians of its supremacy. This creates a trajectory, a trail. The Elder Wand does not quietly pass down a family line like a treasured heirloom. It cuts a bloody path through the history of the wizarding world. Every single master after Antioch must be defeated for the wand to move on. Kill the wizard, or disarm him, or humiliate him in a duel. The result is the same. The wand senses the loss of authority, and it shifts its allegiance to the one who caused it. This single feature makes the Elder Wand the most dangerous object of legend, and the one most likely to bring ruin upon its wielder. It is a curse disguised as a gift, a victory that plants the seeds of your own inevitable downfall. It is no wonder that so many Hallow seekers met dark ends in the pursuit of this one object. They sought the Wand of Destiny, and it found them, but only long enough for them to become the next name in a very long, very tragic, and very bloody list. And that list, the hidden history of the Wand's journey across centuries of violence, is the exact subject of our next chapter. The story of every wizard who has held the Death Stick, and what they were forced to sacrifice to keep it. The thefts, the murders, the desperate obsessions that echo through the ages. This is the story of untold ambition, corruption, and the inevitable fall that follows the grip of such power. This is the story of a trail of bloody conquest. We ended the last chapter holding the Elder Wand in our hands, studying its construction. 15 inches of elder wood, a core of thestral tail hair, a wand built for power, built to be unsurpassable. But a wand is a tool. What happens to the wizard who wields it? Antioch Peverell did not know how deeply the wand's reputation would cut into his own fate. Antioch Peverell was the first brother, the one who asked for a wand that could defeat any opponent. In the fairy tale, he boasted of it. In historical reality, he likely did the same. The exclusive nature of the object created immediate, lethal envy. It is not recorded who struck Antioch down, only that he was robbed of the wand, and his life ended in a violent ambush. This was the first lesson of the Elder Wand, taught in blood. Its power could never be enjoyed quietly. It could never be kept secret. The manner of Antioch's death set a brutal precedent for every owner who followed, and so the trail of bloody conquest began in earnest. The wand passed from hand to hand, almost always by force. The wizard who killed Antioch did not die in his bed. Soon, another wanted the power, and that wizard found them. The wand's legend grew with every murder. It became known as a weapon that could not be defeated, which meant its master had to be defeated to win it. Every owner carried a target on their back. To hold the Elder Wand was to announce to the wizarding world, "I am the champion for anyone who wishes to prove themselves." The wand did not offer safety. It offered a crown of thorns. It was during these dark centuries of shifting allegiances that the wand earned its most chilling nickname, the Death Stick. It was a name that whispered fear, a name that acknowledged the fate of those who held it. Sometimes it was called the Wand of Destiny, but that felt far too noble for a tool that seemed to thrive on conflict. The name Death Stick fit the brutal simplicity of its nature. It took life so that it could serve a new master. It became less of a magical instrument and more of a curse that specific wizards were willing to trade their souls for. As the centuries rolled on, the wand surfaced in the hands of a wizard named Emeric the Evil. His name is not kind in the history books. He was a wizard of immense cruelty and ambition, and he used the Elder Wand to carve a bloody path across the land. Emeric understood exactly what he held. He used the wand to terrorize his enemies, but he also understood the deadly cycle he was part of. History records that Emeric met his end in a duel against another dark wizard, a man named Egbert. The wand, of course, changed hands. This pattern repeated endlessly. No matter how powerful the wizard, the wand demanded a cost. The moment an owner felt invincible was the moment the next challenger appeared. The Elder Wand did not just create powerful wizards. It created a living history of conquest. Every transfer was a story of ambition, fear, and bloodshed. The wand became a magnet for the darkest souls in magical history. It was passed from Emeric to Egbert, and then to Godric, a wizard who wrote extensively about the wand's power. Godric called it his most treacherous friend. Even the name Elder Wand began to fall out of favour in polite circles. It was simpler to call it the Death Stick, because that is what it offered. A master of the Elder Wand was never truly a master. They were a caretaker, waiting for the next challenger to take it from their cold, dead hands. This bloody trail, stretching back to Antioch Peverell, defines the wand's entire legacy. It was a weapon that refused to stay buried in the past. It kept resurfacing, kept finding new hands. And as the centuries passed, the nature of the world changed. Wizards grew more organised. Magical society began to form laws and governments. The Elder Wand could not simply be passed by a duel in a tavern anymore. It had to hide, but it never stopped seeking a master, and eventually it would find its way into the hands of a wand maker who thought he could break the cycle. He was wrong. The trail of blood was far from over, and it was about to enter a modern era where the Elder Wand would be the subject of a global chase, hiding in plain sight. By the end of the last chapter, we had followed the Elder Wand through centuries of violence, passing from hand to hand in a trail that seemed stained with blood. Every master who claimed the Wand of Destiny soon learned that its power came with a price. A target painted on their back. The cycle was relentless: boast, conquer, fall. And yet, despite this grim pattern, the wand never vanished into legend. It always resurfaced, drawn by ambition or desperation, into the hands of those who believed they could break the curse. By the late 19th century, the wand had passed through countless unnamed owners, its exact lineage blurred by secrecy and murder. But then a name emerged from the shadows of continental magical craftsmanship: Gregorovich, a wand maker of extraordinary skill. Gregorovich was one of the few who openly claimed to possess the Elder Wand. He did not boast in taverns or dueling circles. Instead, he let the wand speak for itself through the quality of his work. Customers came from across Europe, seeking wands that seemed almost alive with power, and Gregorovich, for a time, became the centre of a quiet legend. The master of the Death Stick, the keeper of the unbeatable wand. How the wand fell into the hands of the wand maker. Gregorovich is shrouded in the same darkness that follows every Hallow. According to scattered accounts, Gregorovich acquired the wand in the late 1800s, likely through theft or murder, though he never confirmed the details. He kept it locked away in a private vault within his workshop, studying its construction with the obsessive care of a craftsman who knows he holds something beyond ordinary magic. He documented its properties: the thestral hair core, the elder wood, the precise 15-inch length, and attempted to replicate its power in lesser wands, but he never truly used it. Gregorovich was a maker, not a warrior. The wand sat, dormant, waiting for a master who would wield it with boldness. That master came in the form of a boy. A young Gellert Grindelwald, barely out of his teens, had already begun to devour every forbidden text he could find about the deathly Hallows. He had seen the symbol carved into an old book, and from that moment, the quest consumed him. Grindelwald's ambition was not merely to possess the Hallows. It was to reshape the wizarding world according to his vision, and the Elder Wand, he believed, was the key to that future. So, in the summer of 1899, or perhaps a few years later, Grindelwald tracked down Gregorovich's workshop. He broke in under cover of darkness, bypassing wards that had held for decades, and stole the wand from its velvet-lined case. The moment a young Gellert Grindelwald stole the wand, changing the course of magical history, it was not an act of random theft. Grindelwald had studied the wand's history, understood its fickle allegiance. He knew that simply taking it would not guarantee obedience. He had to defeat its previous master. But Gregorovich, for all his skill, was no duelist. When Grindelwald confronted him, The Wandmaker barely had time to raise his own wand before Grindelwald disarmed him with a simple yet devastating spell. In that instant, the Elder Wand recognized its new master, and Grindelwald felt its true power surge through him. He later wrote of that moment as an awakening, a clarity that swept away all doubt. He was no longer a boy with dangerous ideas. He was a wizard holding the Wand of Destiny. The Wand's role in Grindelwald's rise to power across Europe cannot be overstated. With the Elder Wand in his possession, Grindelwald began a campaign of terror and persuasion that would span decades. He did not rely solely on the Wand's raw strength, though he used it to crush any wizard who dared oppose him in single combat. More importantly, the Wand lent his magic a depth and precision that made even his simplest spells seem unstoppable. Borders fell, ministries bent. The wizarding world watched, paralyzed, as Grindelwald's influence spread like a tide. The symbol of the deathly Hallows, once a mark of curiosity, became a banner of fear, and at the center of it all was the wand, the same piece of elder wood that had once been locked away in a wandmaker's vault, now a weapon of conquest. But Grindelwald knew that the wand's power came with a condition. It could be taken from him just as he had taken it. He became obsessed with ensuring no one could defeat him. He never married, never trusted fully. He surrounded himself with acolytes, but always kept the wand close, its allegiance a constant worry. For all his brilliance, he never understood the irony. The very thing that gave him dominion was also the source of his greatest vulnerability. The wand that had chosen him in a stolen moment would one day be wrested from his hand, and that day would come in a duel that the wizarding world still speaks of in hushed tones. A duel that would pit Grindelwald against the only wizard who ever matched him. Not in ambition, but in wisdom and courage. A duel that took place in 1945, when the fate of magic itself hung in the balance. That is the story we will tell next. That is the story of the Elder Wander's final, legendary confrontation. The Wandmaker Gregorovich had possessed the Elder Wand only briefly before it was torn from his grasp by a young visionary whose ambition far outstripped his own. That thief was Gellert Grindelwald, and with the death stick in his hand, the wizarding world was plunged into its most devastating global conflict. But for one wizard, the war was not just a matter of politics or territory. It was an intimate personal crucible forged in a summer of reckless dreams, and a tragedy that had never quite healed. That wizard was Albus Dumbledore. For years, Dumbledore refused to confront his former friend. The guilt of their shared history of Ariana's death kept him bound to an agonizing inaction. Grindelwald's crusade consumed Europe. His followers spread a doctrine of wizarding supremacy, and the Elder Wand carved a path of devastation through the ministries of magic that dared to resist. And yet Dumbledore waited. He taught at Hogwarts. He studied alchemy and dragon's blood. He watched the tide of history roll in, knowing that he carried the key to halting it, shackled by the memory of a brother and sister who had paid the price for a boy's obsession with the Hallows. But war cannot be ignored forever. As Grindelwald's campaign of terror spread, as muggles were slaughtered, and wizards subjugated in the name of a greater good, Dumbledore knew the confrontation was no longer avoidable. It was inevitable, and it would be a duel unlike any the magical world had ever witnessed. Grindelwald had grown arrogant. He had the unbeatable wand. He had an army, and he had a fortress built to contain his enemies. But he had never faced Albus Dumbledore in his full power. He had never faced the wizard who had learned, at the cost of his sister's life, that love and sacrifice were forces no wand could conquer. The year was 1945. The location, as history records it, was the castle of Nurmengard, Grindelwald's own stronghold. But those who study the deeper accounts know that the clash of minds was felt far beyond the walls of that prison. It is said the very skies split open, the mountains groaned. Muggles in neighbouring villages reported strange earthquakes and storms that erupted from a clear blue sky. This was not a simple duel. It was a battle of ideas incarnate. It was the confrontation of the two most brilliant wizards of the age, wielding powers that bent reality itself. Grindelwald unleashed the full fury of the Elder Wand. He had spent years mastering it. He believed it made him invincible, and yet Dumbledore matched him. Transfiguration on a scale never seen, fire that breathed like a living creature, shields that held against the very force of death. The fight was not merely magical, it was psychological. Grindelwald knew Dumbledore's guilt. He tried to use it. He twisted their shared history, shouting about the greater good, about the rights of wizards, about the pathetic sentiment that had crippled Albus and caused his sister's death. But Dumbledore had made peace with that tragedy. He had learned that the Hallows were not instruments of conquest, but of temptation, and in that moment he understood that the only way to truly master death was to stop running from the dead. When the dust settled, Grindelwald was vanquished. Albus Dumbledore stood victorious, and the Elder Wand was his. Here is the crucial detail that sets Dumbledore apart from every previous master. He did not kill Grindelwald. The entire history of the Elder Wand was a trail of blood. Antioch bragged and was murdered in his sleep. Emeric the Evil was slaughtered by his rival. Every single owner who sought power through the wand died violently at the hands of their conqueror. Dumbledore broke that cycle. He disarmed Grindelwald. He bound him in chains of his own making, trapping him in the highest cell of his own fortress. And the Elder Wand recognized total defeat. It bowed to the superior wizard. The wand's allegiance transfers through conquest, not necessarily through murder. Grindelwald had lost. His power was broken. His philosophy was shattered. The wand, a sentient artifact that craves strength, felt Dumbledore's victory as an absolute truth. It turned its loyalty to the victor, who had proven he could win, without stooping to the cheap violence that had defined its past. Dumbledore was now the true master of the Elder Wand. He did not boast about this. He returned to Hogwarts, carrying the most dangerous wand in existence. For over 5 decades, this secret rested in his hands. He tucked it within the folds of his robes, a silent and terrible weight against his heart. The wand that had caused so much misery was now hidden in a school for children. He used it sparingly. He refused to let its corrupting influence take hold. He had possessed the Resurrection Stone too briefly, and had recoiled from its hollow promise. But the wand was a tool of protection. He used it to shield his students when Voldemort rose to power. He used it to see through enchantments, to weave protections over the castle, and to plan the downfall of the Dark Lord far in advance. But this secret possession came with a profound loneliness. Dumbledore knew he was the most powerful wizard alive, but he was also a man broken by the past. He kept the wand because he had to. He knew he was the only one who could be trusted with it, and yet in his solitude he waited. He watched the tangled threads of destiny weave together. He saw Harry Potter's name appear on a parchment at the Triwizard Tournament, and he knew that his own time with the Elder Wand was drawing to a close. Possessing the Elder Wand for all those decades was not a simple act of guardianship. It created a fatal flaw in his most careful schemes, a vulnerability he could not fully control, which would eventually turn his greatest strength into an unintended weapon for his enemies. The consequences of Dumbledore holding the wand for so long, and the intricate flaw that unravelled everything, is the story we must follow next. The flaw in Dumbledore's plan was not a matter of ignorance, but of overconfidence in his own ability to script the final act of his life. He knew the Elder Wand's history better than almost anyone alive. He had seen the cost of its ambition, so when he became its master, after defeating Grindelwald, he decided that the trail of blood would end with him. He conceived a strategy that was brilliant in its scope and tragic in its execution. He would die undefeated. The cycle of murder and conquest that had defined the wand for centuries would stop because the wand would have no master to pass to. It was a plan that required absolute control over the circumstances of his death. Severus Snape was chosen as the instrument of that death. Dumbledore asked Snape to kill him, believing that if the killing was an act of mercy, a prearranged assassination, the Elder Wand would not recognize it as a defeat. The Master of the Wand had to be overcome in a duel, forced to surrender. Dumbledore would never fight back. He would simply fall. The wand would not transfer to Snape because Snape had not won the wand. He had only followed orders. It was a masterstroke of theory. The wand's power would die with Dumbledore, and the war would be one step closer to ending. But Dumbledore made one critical error. He assumed he could predict every variable. The unexpected intervention of Draco Malfoy shattered the controlled environment Dumbledore had so carefully constructed. Voldemort had given Draco the impossible task of murdering the headmaster. Draco was terrified, outmatched and desperate. He was not a killer. He was a boy trying to save his family, crumbling under a burden he was never meant to carry. On the night of the Astronomy Tower, Draco cornered Dumbledore. The old wizard was weak from the potion in the cave, barely able to defend himself. Draco disarmed him. It was a clumsy, frightened gesture, a disarming charm shouted by a teenager who had no idea what he was actually doing. But the Elder Wand understood. A simple disarming charm transferred the most powerful weapon in the world to an unsuspecting teenager. Draco Malfoy cast the spell Expelliarmus, and in that moment the allegiance of the Elder Wand shifted. Dumbledore was defeated, not killed, not overpowered in a grand duel. He was disarmed by a student. The wand does not care about context. It does not care about intention. It cares about victory. And in that instant, Draco Malfoy was the victor. Dumbledore's plan was flawless in theory, but it failed because he could not account for the chaos of human desperation. He assumed the defeat would be a private surrender. Instead, it was a public conquest, witnessed only by the wand. Draco never knew what he had done. He never held the Elder Wand. He never felt its power. He probably dismissed the disarming as a lucky break, a moment of panic that happened to work. But the wand remembered. It now recognized Draco Malfoy as its true master, and when Dumbledore died at the hands of Snape moments later, the Elder Wand was no longer his to give away. The chain of succession was not broken. It was simply transferred to a boy who was entirely unaware of the legacy he now carried. This is the mistake that Voldemort will make. He will spend the final year of the war obsessing over the Elder Wand, believing that its master is buried in Dumbledore's tomb. He will assume that Snape, as the killer, inherited the wand. He will miss the truth entirely. He will never think to look at Draco Malfoy, the terrified teenager who accidentally conquered the most dangerous relic in magical history. And that miscalculation, that failure to understand how the wand truly chooses its master, will lead Voldemort directly into the path of his own destruction. That is the thread we will follow next. That is Voldemort's fatal miscalculation. Dumbledore had intended to break the chain. He planned to die undefeated, to take the secret of the Elder Wand's allegiance with him into the tomb. But Draco Malfoy, a terrified teenager with a wand pointed at the headmaster, had unwittingly undone centuries of careful maneuvering. The wand passed to Draco in that split second atop the Astronomy Tower, and Dumbledore's final act, his acceptance of death, meant nothing to the wand's cold, unforgiving rules. The plan had a flaw, and that flaw would echo all the way to the final battlefield. Voldemort, meanwhile, was consumed by a problem he could not solve. The twin cores. His wand and Harry Potter's wand were brothers, each with a feather from the same phoenix, Fawkes. Every time they faced each other, the wands refused to fight properly. Priori incantatem, the golden thread, the ghost-like echoes of Voldemort's victims. It was unpredictable, humiliating and dangerous. He needed a wand that would overpower Harry's without question. A wand that could not be matched, and so his thoughts turned, as they always did when he saw ultimate power, to the Elder Wand. He had known about the wand for years, of course. He had researched its history, traced its bloody lineage, but he had never considered it his primary tool until the twin cores became a stubborn wall. In his mind, the Elder Wand was a simple solution. Find it, win it, and the boy's protection would crumble. He did not understand that the wand's allegiance was not a prize to be claimed by the strongest wizard alone. It was a bond forged through defeat, not through intention. Voldemort learned that the wand had been in the possession of Gregorovitch, the wand maker, and that a young thief, Grindelwald, had stolen it decades ago. From Grindelwald, the wand passed to Dumbledore, who defeated Grindelwald in the famous duel of 1945. Yes, Dumbledore had been the wand's master. So when Voldemort killed Dumbledore, or so he believed, he expected the wand's allegiance to transfer to him. But he had not killed Dumbledore. Snape had performed the killing curse at Dumbledore's own request. But by then, the wand no longer belonged to Dumbledore. Draco Malfoy had disarmed him. The wand had shifted, silently and visibly, to a boy who had never sought it. Voldemort, of course, knew nothing of that moment. He had not been there. He did not watch the struggle on the tower. He only knew that Dumbledore was dead, and that Snape had been the one to cast the spell. And so he concluded that Snape, as Dumbledore's executioner, must now be the master of the Elder Wand. It was a logical error, but a fatal one, because the Elder Wand does not care who kills its previous owner. It cares who defeats them, and Draco had defeated Dumbledore, not Snape. The Dark Lord's obsession with the wand deepened as the war progressed. He needed it to become truly invincible, to finally rid himself of the Twin Cores problem. He pursued it with single-minded ruthlessness, breaking into Dumbledore's tomb, stealing the wand from the dead headmaster's hands. He held it, felt its power, and believed it was his. But the wand did not perform for him as it should. It was powerful, yes, but not with the unstoppable force he expected. Spells he cast with it seemed strong, but they did not feel. He sensed something was wrong, but he could not identify the source. And so he turned to Severus Snape, the man he trusted most, the man he had killed Dumbledore through. Voldemort decided that the wand would only truly serve him if Snape died, believing that the wand's allegiance would then pass to Snape's killer. He did not understand that the wand had already abandoned Snape. He did not understand that Snape had never been its master at all. Voldemort believed in simple, brutal transfers. Kill the previous owner, take the prize. That was how he had always operated. But the Elder Wand operates on a subtler law. The law of conquest, not of murder. In the Shrieking Shack, with Nagini coiled and ready, Voldemort murdered Severus Snape. He did it with cold efficiency, believing he was finally securing the wand's full loyalty. He thought that by killing Snape, he would become the true master of the Elder Wand, free from the Twin Cores, free from Harry Potter. But he was wrong. The wand had already chosen its master, and that master was not Snape. It was not Voldemort. It was Harry. In the final confrontation, in the Great Hall at Hogwarts, Voldemort raised the Elder Wand against Harry. He cast the killing curse, the same curse that had failed so many times before, and the wand, the most powerful wand ever created, refused to harm its true master. The curse rebounded. It struck Voldemort with his own magic, and he fell. The Elder Wand would not kill the boy who had won it. Not through Draco, not through a chain of defeats that Voldemort had never bothered to trace. That miscalculation, born of arrogance and a misunderstanding of wand law, cost him everything. He had spent months hunting the wand, killing for it, sacrificing his most loyal servant, all because he could not see past his own belief that power comes from domination. But the Elder Wand does not belong to the one who kills. It belongs to the one who conquers. And Harry Potter had conquered Draco Malfoy in a scuffle months before, without even knowing it. That single quiet moment, far from any battlefield, had sealed Voldemort's fate. Now the Elder Wand was no longer needed. Its story had reached its end. But there was another Hallow, one that had played a quieter, more intimate role in Harry's journey. A stone that could summon the shadows of the dead. It had been hidden inside a golden snitch, waiting for the moment when Harry would need to see faces he had lost. That stone, the Resurrection Stone, carries its own weight of sorrow and temptation, and its story is just as deep as the wand's. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. Voldemort held the Elder Wand. He believed it was his key to immortality, his ultimate weapon against Harry Potter. But a wand is a tool. It has no conscience, no loyalty beyond the master who conquered it. And the Dark Lord, in his arrogance, had convinced himself that killing Severus Snape had won him that loyalty. He was wrong. But while we linger on the fate of the first brother's gift, the story of the deathly Hallows requires us to step back, to look at the path taken by the second brother, Cadmus Peverell. His request was, perhaps the most dangerous of all, not for power over others, but for power over death itself, the power to bring back someone you have lost. According to the legend, the three brothers reached a treacherous river. They built a bridge. Death was cheated, but in the story, Death was clever. He offered them gifts. Antioch asked for a wand that could never lose a duel. Cadmus asked for something that could return the dead to the living. He had lost a woman he loved. The old tale does not give her a name. She simply existed, and then she did not. And Cadmus could not bear it. Death took a stone from the riverbank, a simple black pebble, and gave it to the second brother, the Resurrection Stone, the power to call souls back from the veil. But here is the tragedy that defines the entire history of this object. Cadmus believed he had won. He took the stone home. He turned it over in his hands. He figured out the ritual. He summoned her back. She appeared. She was beautiful. She was exactly as he remembered. And she was cold, not physically cold. She was a shade, a ghost in the shape of a woman. She could not truly touch him. She could not truly speak to him. She was a memory given a body, but a memory is a poor substitute for a soul. She existed in a hollow, imitative state. This is the central lie of the Resurrection Stone. It does not raise the dead. It summons something from beyond the veil, yes. But it is not a true resurrection. The shades are not happy to be there. They are pulled from the peace of the afterlife. They are echoes. They lack the full substance of life. They are a reflection of the user's own desire, filtered through the lens of grief. Cadmus wanted a wife. He got a phantom that reminded him, every second, that she was dead. The psychological toll was absolute. He could not eat. He could not sleep. He just stared at this beautiful, sorrowful ghost. He tried to hold her. His hands went through her. He realized the cruel joke. Death had not given him a gift. Death had given him a curse designed to drive him into the very arms he was trying to avoid. Cadmus Peverell, the second brother, the proud wizard who thought he could cheat the grave, was driven to madness by the absence of the woman he loved. Even while staring at her face, he hanged himself to truly join her. This is the danger of the Resurrection Stone. It preys on the inability to let go. It exploits grief. It offers a whisper of comfort that quickly curdles into an obsession. The user starts living in the past, ignoring the present, all for the sake of a shade that cannot truly exist in the world of the living. Albus Dumbledore understood this temptation intimately. He was obsessed with the Hallows in his youth. He wanted the Resurrection Stone more than anything else. He wanted to see his mother. He wanted to apologize to his sister, Ariana. He wanted to beg for forgiveness. He had to learn the hard lesson that Cadmus learned. The dead do not wish to be disturbed. The stone is not a way to heal. It is a way to make the wound bleed forever. When Harry Potter turned the stone over in his hand, deep in the Forbidden Forest, he was making a choice that defined him. He did not want to bring his parents back to the world of the living. He wanted them to walk with him to his death. He wanted the courage to let go. Harry's use of the stone is the only correct use in the entire known history of the Hallows. He let them go. He did not try to keep them. He did not try to build a life around their shades. He accepted their comfort. He said goodbye, and he let the stone fall to the forest floor. He chose the living world. He chose to let the dead be dead. This is the wisdom that Cadmus lacked, the wisdom that Dumbledore sought for decades. The stone descended through the Peverell Bloodline. From the second brother, it passed to the eldest son, generation after generation. But by the time it reached the 20th century, it was no longer held by a line of gentle seekers of lost love. The bloodline had curdled. The stone ended up in the hands of the Gaunt family. The Gaunt family were the direct descendants of Cadmus Peverell. They wore the stone as a ring. Marvolo Gaunt treasured it not for its magical power of resurrection, but because it proved he was descended from the Peverells. It was a status symbol, a relic of grandeur in a family that had fallen into squalor and violence. The irony is so thick it is suffocating. The most dangerous and psychologically devastating Hallow, the object that tempted the greatest wizards into madness, was sitting on the hand of a violent, ignorant brute who beat his children and raved about blood purity. He never even knew what it truly was. He never turned it. The story of the Resurrection Stone is not just the story of Cadmus Peverell. It is the story of the family that could not let go of its legacy, the Gaunts. This is where the stone fell, into the dirt of an old shack, worn by a line of bitter failures, waiting for a descendant who would use it to commit murder. That is the next chapter, the Gaunt Legacy, a legacy of decay, obsession, and the seed that grew into Lord Voldemort. Join us next time. The previous chapter explored the tragic origin of the Resurrection Stone, the story of Cadmus Peverell, and his desperate attempt to bring back the woman he loved. We saw how the stone, in its true nature, provides only a hollow imitation of life, a cold shade that cannot truly return, and how that drove Cadmus to take his own life. But the story of the second Hallow does not end with its creator. It continues through the centuries, passed down through the bloodline of Cadmus Peverell, and it is this legacy we must now follow. The Resurrection Stone, that small black stone engraved with the symbol of the Deathly Hallows, was not lost to history. It was not buried with Cadmus or left to crumble in some forgotten tomb. Instead, it was preserved. It was kept within the family, passed from one generation to the next, not as a tool to be used, but as an heirloom, a token of the Peverell name, and it was given a form that would allow it to be worn, to be carried, to be a constant reminder of the family's ancient and noble blood. The stone was set into a ring, a signet ring, heavy and dark, with a black stone at its centre, a symbol of the family's connection to the Hallows, and to the legend of the three brothers who had once outwitted death itself. This ring, the Peverell ring, became the defining artifact of the Gaunt family, for the Gaunts were the direct descendants of Cadmus Peverell, and they were the ones who inherited the stone. But by the time the ring reached them, the Peverell name had faded. The line had descended, not into greatness, but into bitterness, into poverty, into a state of decay that was a far cry from the power and mystery of the original legend. The Gaunt family, by the late 19th and early 20th centuries, lived in a small, dilapidated cottage on the outskirts of Little Hangleton. They were a family known for their violence, their arrogance, and their obsession with their own pure blood status. They were not wealthy. They were not respected. They were in many ways a shadow of what they had once been, clinging to the memory of their lineage, as if it were the only thing of value they had left. And at the head of this family, in this time, was Marvolo Gaunt. Marvolo was a man consumed by his own sense of importance. He would stand in his ramshackle home, surrounded by squalor, and boast of his ancestry, of his descent from the Peverells, of the ancient and noble line that ran through his veins. He was a man who saw the world in terms of blood, who believed that his family's name, even if it was now attached to nothing but a crumbling cottage and a reputation for cruelty, was worth more than any other, and the centerpiece of his pride, the object he would show to anyone who would listen, was the ring, the signet ring with the black stone. Marvolo Gaunt wore that ring, and he treasured it, not because he understood its true power, but because he saw it as a symbol of his pure blood status, a symbol of his connection to a past that he believed made him superior to all those around him. He did not know what the stone actually was. He did not know that the black stone on his finger was the Resurrection Stone, the second of the Deathly Hallows, an object that could summon the shades of the dead. To Marvolo Gaunt, it was simply the Peverell ring. It was the proof of his family's heritage. It was the mark that set him apart from the muggle, born, and the half-blood wizards he despised. He wore it with a sense of entitlement, sense of ownership, completely ignorant of the fact that he held in his possession one of the most dangerous and tragic objects in magical history. The irony is profound. Here was a man who had nothing, who lived in poverty, who was consumed by his own anger and his own sense of grievance, and yet he walked around with a Hallow on his hand. A Hallow that could have given him the one thing he truly seemed to lack, a connection to those he had lost. But Marvolo was not interested in the dead. He was interested only in the living, in his own status, in his own name. This ignorance, this blindness to the true nature of the ring would have consequences. Marvolo had 2 children, his son, Muffin, and his daughter, Merope. Merope, in particular, was a figure of tragedy. She was a woman who had been crushed by her father's tyranny, who had no magic of her own to speak of, who was treated as a servant in her own home, and it was Merope who would eventually change the course of the ring's history. She fell in love with a muggle, a man named Tom Riddle, who lived in the manor house above the Gaunt cottage. And when her father and brother discovered this, when they saw her as a betrayal of their pure blood ideals, the violence that was always simmering in the Gaunt home boiled over. Marvolo and Morfin were arrested, sent to Azkaban, and Merope was left alone. And in that moment of solitude, Merope did something that would alter the legacy of the Peverell line forever. She used magic. She used a love potion, a simple but powerful spell, to ensnare the muggle she loved. She ran away with him, married him, and for a time she believed she had found happiness. But the potion wore off. The love she had created was not real. And when Tom Riddle discovered the truth, when he realised he had been tricked, he abandoned her. Merope, pregnant, alone and heartbroken, died shortly after giving birth. She left her son, a boy she named Tom Marvolo Riddle, in an orphanage, and she left behind as her only legacy the ring, the Peverell ring, the ring with the black stone. She had not understood its value. She had not known what it was. She had simply kept it, a token of the family she had been forced to leave, a symbol of the name she had tried to carry on. And when she died, the ring passed to her son, but not directly. It was not given to him in love. It was left behind, in the Gaunt cottage, where it was found by her brother Morfin, who was released from Azkaban. Morfine kept the ring, a bitter reminder of his sister's betrayal, and he wore it as Marvolo had, as a symbol of his own anger, his own pain. And then years later, a man came to that cottage, a man who called himself Lord Voldemort, who was in truth Tom Marvolo Riddle, the son of Merope Gaunt. He came to claim the ring. He came to claim his heritage, and he saw the black stone, and he understood. He knew what it was. He knew that it was the resurrection stone, the Hallow that could summon the dead. But Voldemort was not interested in the dead. He was not interested in summoning shades. He was interested in power. He saw the ring not as a tool for resurrection, but as a symbol of his own lineage, a connection to the Peverell line, and a way to further his own quest for immortality. He took the ring and he turned it into something else. He turned it into a Horcrux, and that is where the story of the Gaunt Legacy takes its next dark turn. The ring, once a symbol of pure blood pride, once a token of a family's bitter history, became a vessel for a fragment of Voldemort's soul. It was hidden, cursed, and left to wait. It would be found, decades later, by Albus Dumbledore, who would recognise it for what it was, who would see the stone, and who would be tempted by its power. The ring would lead to Dumbledore's own destruction, a moment of weakness that would cost him his hand, and ultimately, his life. But that is a story for another time, a story that will be told in the next chapter, when we examine the ring not as a Hallow, but as a Horcrux, and the terrible price that was paid to destroy it. The signet ring of the Peverells, the resurrection stone, lay hidden in the grime and decay of the Gaunt shack. For decades, it was little more than a forgotten relic, a symbol of a family that had squandered its legacy, trapped in bitterness and poverty. But the bloodline of Cadmus Peverell was not entirely spent. It flickered in two remaining souls. The violent, unstable Morphin and the golden-haired boy who would one day become Lord Voldemort. Tom Riddle knew exactly what he was looking for when he returned to Little Hangleton. He was a young man by then, barely out of Hogwarts. He had already researched his lineage with a cold and thorough precision. He knew he was the heir of Salazar Slytherin through his mother, Merope Gaunt. He knew the Gaunts possessed an heirloom of great importance. Morphin was no match for him. Overpowered with a simple, stunning spell, Tom rifled through the squalor of the shack, the old photographs, the rotting furniture. He found the ring. The black stone was unmistakable, carved with the coat of arms of the Peverells, the triangle, the circle, the line, the mark of the deathly Hallows. Though he could not yet grasp its true significance, the theft of the ring and the murder of the Riddle family were two acts born from a single, calculated movement. Tom Riddle did not simply steal the heirloom. To erase his Muggle father's name and sever his connection to that despised side of his blood, he framed Morphin for the entire atrocity. He walked into the Riddle house that night, stood before his father and his grandparents, and killed them with a spell. Then he returned to the Gaunt shack and implanted false memories in Morphin's mind. The ministry arrived, found a dazed Morphin babbling about murder, arrested him and sent him to Azkaban. The murder of the Riddle family was neatly pinned on a man who had done nothing but threaten. Tom Riddle walked away with the ring on his finger, the crime perfectly solved, his name untarnished, and his soul already beginning to splinter. And this is where the tragedy deepens, where the layers of this story become almost unbearable to untangle. The object in Tom Riddle's hand was the Resurrection Stone, the second of the Deathly Hallows, a charm created by Cadmus Peverell to bring back the dead, to conquer the finality of death. Yet the stone was never meant for power over the living. It was a tool of grief, a hollow, cold imitation of life that drove Cadmus to hang himself. It was a monument to the human failure to let go. Voldemort looked at this artifact, this Peverell treasure, and he saw none of its history. He saw a vessel. The ultimate irony is staggering. Voldemort took a Hallow meant to conquer death and turned it into a vessel for a fractured soul. The Resurrection Stone was designed to summon the dead, to offer a glimpse of what is lost. Voldemort twisted it into a cage for the living. Instead of calling forth the shades of the departed, he used it to anchor his own life to the earth. Cadmus Peverell had tried to cheat death with the stone, and it destroyed him. Voldemort succeeded in cheating death by breaking his soul into pieces, and he used Cadmus's own heirloom as the prison. The stone that was meant to show you the faces of those who had gone before was instead used to keep one monstrous soul tethered to the world. He corrupted the object that was created from a desire to love again, and he turned it into an object of pure self-preservation. Having created the Horcrux, Tom Riddle needed to hide it, but he did not venture to a deep cavern or a vault at Gringotts. He returned to the ruins of the Gaunt shack, the same shack where he had stunned Morphin, the same shack where Marvolo Gaunt had once brandished the ring, screaming about his blood status. He hid it simply, beneath the floorboards, protected by curses and enchantments that would punish anyone who tried to steal it. The concealment of the ring in the ruins of the Gaunt shack was a hiding place that spoke directly to his psychology. It was the house of his ancestors, the bloodline of the heir of Slytherin. It was a shrine to his own dark origin, a monument to his perceived superiority. He buried the ring in the dirt of the place that represented his true family, never once recognizing the irony that the stone he held was far older than the Gaunts, far older than his pathetic Muggle father, and far beyond his ability to understand. And there the ring sat, a menace tucked away in the dirt and dust of an abandoned home. It waited, cold and patient, through the rise of the Death Eaters, through the terror of the First Wizarding War. It waited for a man who understood what it truly was. It waited for Albus Dumbledore. When Dumbledore finally traced the lineage of the ring, when he connected the Peverell line to the Gaunts, He found it hidden in that ruined shack. He knew at once what it was. He knew it was a Horcrux, but he also knew, with a terrible certainty, what it could be. The Resurrection Stone, the key to seeing his sister Ariana again. For a man whose entire life had been defined by a single tragic mistake, by the death of his sister at his own hands, the temptation was unbearable. Dumbledore picked up the ring, and that single, powerful, human moment of weakness would set in motion the events that led to his death. It is the subject of our next chapter. Dumbledore's greatest temptation, and the terrible price he paid for giving in to it. Voldemort took the Peverell ring, an object shaped by hands reaching for something far beyond mortal magic, and he bound it to his own desperate flight from death. It was the deepest insult to the legend, transforming a relic meant for reunion into a cage for a fractured soul. But the story of the ring does not end with Tom Riddle's visit to the Gaunt Shack. It ends with Albus Dumbledore, kneeling in the ruins of that same decaying hovel, staring down at a piece of his own youth that he had never truly buried. Dumbledore had spent his entire adult life running from the ambition of his 17-year-old self. He and Grindelwald had dreamed of mastering the Hallows, of bending death itself to their will. It was a fantasy built on ego and grief, and it ended with Ariana dead at their feet. Dumbledore buried that dream along with his sister, or so he believed. But when he heard that the Gaunt family line had ended, when he traced the lineage of Cadmus Peverell to that dirty little shack, he knew exactly what he was walking toward. He was not hunting a Horcrux, he was hunting a ghost. He found the ring lying on a table, or perhaps on the floor, nestled in the dust and rot of generations of squalor, and the moment he saw the black stone, set in that gaudy gold band, he recognized the symbol etched into its surface, the triangle, the circle, the line, the deathly Hallows. It was the Resurrection Stone. He had spent years searching for it, building theories around it, and here it was, abandoned, overlooked by Voldemort as a mere vessel for something far darker. This was the moment of his greatest temptation. He knew the ring was dangerous. He knew it carried a curse. Voldemort had placed it here as bait, or as a trap, and Dumbledore understood dark magic better than almost anyone alive. He should have prepared. He should have summoned the sword, performed the counter spells, and approached the object with the cold precision of a curse breaker. But he did none of those things, because the ring was not just a Horcrux. It was the promise of forgiveness, the desire to see his sister again, to apologize, to explain the night she died, overwhelmed every ounce of his legendary caution. He forgot he was the headmaster of Hogwarts. He forgot he was the greatest wizard of the age. In that single fragile moment, he was just an older brother drowning in guilt. He reached out, he touched the ring, and he put it on his finger. The curse was instantaneous. It was a blast of pure necrosis, a searing black fire that erupted from the ring and raced up his hand, turning the flesh grey and brittle. It was not a slow poison designed to give him time to bargain. It was a failsafe crafted by Tom Riddle at his most vicious, meant to destroy anyone who dared to touch his precious vessel. The desire to see Ariana was answered, but only in the most perverse way. Before any shade could appear, before he could see her face, Dumbledore's life was draining into his own palm. The stone clattered to the floor. He had to tear the ring off his finger with his bare, burning hand. He managed to apparate back to Hogwarts, collapsing in the headmaster's office. Severus Snape was summoned, and Snape did something extraordinary. He trapped the curse, forcing it into the confines of Dumbledore's right hand. But he could not cure it. The damage was permanent, a slow rot that would never heal. The hand turned black, withered, dead. It was a constant, visible reminder of his folly. The curse had given him at most a year to live, and all of it, every second of that borrowed time, was the price of wanting to see a ghost. In that moment of agony, something shifted. Dumbledore understood the Hallows in a way he never had before. He had studied them, theorized about them, but now he had felt their cruelty firsthand. The Resurrection Stone did not bring back the dead. It only summoned the shadow of your own longing. It was a mirror, not a doorway, and when he shattered the physical ring with the sword of Gryffindor, destroying the Horcrux within it, he held the black stone in his palm and finally understood what he had to do. He could not keep it, he could not destroy it, but he had to give it to Harry at exactly the right moment, and only when Harry was ready to understand the difference between seeking the dead and honouring them. So Dumbledore took the first golden snitch Harry Potter ever caught, the one that sealed Gryffindor's victory in his very first Quidditch match, the one that held an echo of his father running through the rose bushes, and he placed the resurrection stone inside its golden shell. He sealed the snitch with a complex charm, a message written in the space between life and death, a riddle that would only uncover itself when the end was near. I open at the close. Dumbledore left the snitch to Harry in his will, a final gift from a mentor who had learned his hardest lesson far too late. The snitch sat in the headmaster's office, waiting. It contained the one thing Dumbledore had been too weak to resist. Hidden inside the one thing Harry had never let slip through his fingers. And when that moment came, when Harry stood on the edge of the Forbidden Forest, holding the snitch against his lips, he would whisper that same phrase, and the stone would fall into his palm. The next chapter explores what that riddle truly meant, how the stone finally revealed its secret, and why Dumbledore believed that only at the moment of death could the resurrection stone be used, without destroying the soul of the one who held it. Dumbledore's greatest temptation, as we saw in the previous chapter, became his deepest wound. The moment he slipped the ring onto his finger, the curse sealed his fate. He had perhaps a year left at most, and yet, even as he lay dying, he did not destroy the stone. He hid it, not in some vault or secret chamber, but inside a golden snitch, which he bequeathed to Harry Potter in his will. That snitch contained no note, no explanation, only an inscription etched into the metal in Dumbledore's own handwriting. I open at the close. A riddle, of course, a puzzle that would yield no answer until the final moment. What did it mean? I open at the close. The snitch would open only when the time was right, and that time would be when Harry was ready to accept the inevitability of his own death. You see, Dumbledore understood something that Voldemort never could. The stone was never meant to be a weapon. It was not a tool for summoning the dead as allies in battle. Its true purpose was far more personal, far more profound. The stone could only offer comfort, a last glimpse of those who had gone before, a quiet farewell. But to receive that comfort, you had to be willing to let go of life itself. You had to be ready to die. This is why Dumbledore did not tell Harry about the stone earlier. He could not. If Harry had known he possessed the resurrection stone, he might have used it prematurely, perhaps to summon his parents for advice or support, but that would have been a hollow imitation. A distraction from the path he had to walk. The stone could not change the outcome of the war. It could not bring back the dead. It could only give Harry the strength to face his own end, and that strength had to come from a place of absolute acceptance. The snitch would open at the close. At the close of Harry's life, when he walked into the Forbidden Forest to meet Voldemort. And so on that final night, with the battle raging around him and the time drawing near, Harry pressed the snitch to his lips and whispered, "I'm about to die." The metal casing sprang open. Inside lay the black stone, smooth and cold, engraved with the symbol of the deathly Hallows. The triangle, the circle, the line. It was the second gift, the resurrection stone, passed down from Cadmus Peverell to the Gaunt family, stolen by Voldemort, hidden by Dumbledore, and now resting in Harry's palm. He turned it over 3 times in his hand, as the old tale described, and then they came. First, a shadow that flickered at the edge of the trees, then another. Soon the air around him seemed to shimmer, and 4 figures emerged from the darkness, more solid than ghosts, yet not quite alive. His father, James, his mother, Lily, his godfather, Sirius Black, and Remus Lupin, who had fallen in the battle only hours before. They walked toward him slowly, their faces filled with a gentle warmth that no spell could replicate. Harry felt his throat tighten. He could not speak at first, but they did not need words. Lily smiled at him, and James put a hand on his shoulder, a hand that felt almost real, almost warm. Sirius gave him a nod of quiet pride, and Lupin said softly that they were all so proud of him. They told him that he had been so brave. They told him that it was time to go, that they would be with him all the way. And the most remarkable thing was that they were not afraid. They had crossed the veil, and they knew what awaited on the other side. Their presence gave Harry the courage to walk forward into the forest, to meet Voldemort, to lay down his life willingly. This is the significance of Dumbledore's riddle. The stone could only be used when Harry had accepted that he must die. It could not be used to avoid death, or to delay it, or to fight it. It could only be used as a final farewell, a moment of grace before the end. And by giving Harry that moment, Dumbledore ensured that Harry would face Voldemort, not as a victim dragged to slaughter, but as a master of death. One who understood that dying for others is the truest form of immortality. When Harry dropped the stone in the forest after the resurrection, he let it fall into the undergrowth, never to be retrieved again. He chose not to keep it, just as he would later choose not to keep the Elder Wand. The only Hallow he would carry forward was the third gift, the Cloak of Invisibility. The one object that had never corrupted its owner, the one that had always been used for protection and love, not for power. And that cloak, as we shall see in the next chapter, had a story all its own, stretching back through the centuries to the quiet, wise third brother who understood that true mastery of death does not lie in conquering it, but in accepting it with grace. When Harry Potter spoke the words, "I am about to die," and turned the snitch in his palm, the black stone, the symbol of the second brother, fell gently into his hand. But it was the third brother, Ignotus, and his gift that allowed Harry to close the circle. The Cloak of Invisibility is often viewed as the simplest Hallow, the least complex. Yet I would argue it is the profoundest of them all, and it holds the deepest secret for anyone who truly wishes to understand what it means to be the master of death. Let us first understand what the Hallow Cloak absolutely is not. It is not a standard invisibility cloak. Standard cloaks are imperfect. They are woven from the hair of demiguises, or heavily enchanted with disillusionment charms, or stitched from the fur of a mooncalf. They are temporary. They fade with time. They become tatty and translucent. They can be punctured, burned, or simply worn out. A common cloak, after a decade or two, begins to let light through. It can be beaten by a well-cast hominum revelio. It can fail its owner at the worst possible moment. This is why the Hallow Cloak is fundamentally different from standard invisibility cloaks. It is not a textile of enchantment. It is a permanence. It cannot decay. It cannot be pierced. It grants a true invisibility, a resistance to hexes, charms, and the wear of time. It does not fade. No summoning charm can rip it away from you. No detection spell can find you beneath its folds. It is a perfect bubble between you and the world. The cloak does not merely hide you from the eyes of men and beasts. It hides you from the path-finding of magic itself. It is completely immune to the decay that plagues lesser artifacts. It will not become transparent. It will not tatter. It is a truly ageless thing. Consider how many times Harry Potter slipped under that cloak. He walked through Hogwarts under the noses of the most powerful headmasters in centuries. He stood in the middle of the Ministry of Magic. He flew with dragons. He entered the Forbidden Forest. The cloak never frayed. It never glimmered. It simply worked. It was the silent, constant witness to his entire heroic arc. When Moody's magical eye could see him, the cloak was not failing. It was confronting an artifact of equal darkness. The cloak's perfection was not in absolute impenetrability against every dark invention, but in its nature. It was never meant to be a weapon. It was meant to be a sanctuary. This brings us to Ignotus Peverell. The true wisdom of the Hallows does not lie in the Elder Wand's power or the Resurrection Stone's tragic longing. It lies in the quiet request of the youngest brother. When he stepped forward, He did not demand victory. He did not demand love stolen back from the grave. He understood the nature of death. Death is a hunter. Death follows the scent of ambition, of grief, of exposed magic. Ignotus Peverell's wisdom in requesting a gift that allowed him to hide from death itself was absolute. He asked for the means to live without being pursued. He understood that a life fought with the wand is a life constantly under threat. A life haunted by the stone is a life lived backwards. But a life hidden under the cloak is a life fully, peacefully lived. He did not seek to conquer death. He sought to evade him, and he succeeded. He lived to old age, a full and complete life. And when the time came, when he was ready, he took off the cloak and greeted death as an old friend. That is the mastery of death, not immortality, acceptance. The cloak allowed him to choose the hour of his departure, unafraid and unsullied by conflict. He was the only brother who died a natural death, surrounded by his own years, rather than by violence or despair. The cloak was passed down through the Peverell line, through the Potters, and eventually to Ignotus' direct descendant, James Potter. James borrowed it from his own father, Fleamont, to use as a temporary plaything. He never thought of it as a Hallow. He never knew its true pedigree. And then James died. He died without the cloak, but he left it behind. And on a snowy night in 1981, a baby boy was left on a doorstep, and in the hands of a giant, the cloak waited. For an entire lifetime it waited. It was not simply a cloak. It was the collected wisdom of a brother who understood that the best way to face the darkness is not to fight it, but to pass through it unseen. When Harry learned the truth, when he stood in the castle talking to Dumbledore, he understood something crucial. To be master of death is not to possess the trinkets. It is to understand their price. The wand demands combat. The stone demands grief. The cloak demands nothing but patience. It asks you to live your life. Harry united the Hallows. He possessed the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Cloak. He had become the true master of death, but he refused the cycle. He broke the wand. He left the stone in the forest. Only the cloak did he keep. It was the only one that did not corrupt, because it required nothing of its owner but to live. It was the only Hallow that fulfilled its purpose exactly as requested, without irony, without cost. This is the legacy that Harry Potter chose to preserve. This brings us to a deeper lineage, a heritage steeped in the very fabric of the Hallows. The cloak was never just a magical artifact, it was a birthright, and understanding that inheritance, the full weight of the Potter inheritance, changes everything we thought we knew about Harry's story, about the quiet Potters, and about how the wisest brother ensured his wisdom would reach the one who needed it most. So that cloak, the one that never fades, never wears thin, never betrays its wearer under the most probing of spells, was not simply a family heirloom. It was a secret, carried through centuries like a quiet flame, passed from father to son, in a line so unremarkable that no one thought to look for treasure among the Potters. And that was exactly how Ignotus Peverell had intended it. When Ignotus chose the Cloak of Invisibility over his brother's gifts of power and resurrection, he understood something they did not. That the only way to truly escape death was to live unnoticed. To be unseen was not to hide from the world, but to move through it without leaving a trace that death could follow. He used the cloak to build a quiet life, to raise children, to grow old in a home where the knock of a stranger was never the knock of a reaper. And when he finally died, peacefully in his bed, as the tale tells us, he left the cloak to his son with a single instruction: keep it hidden. For generations, that instruction was followed with absolute fidelity. The Peverell name faded into the Potter line, and with it, the knowledge of what the cloak truly was. Most who inherited it believed it to be a particularly fine invisibility cloak. Rare, yes, but not impossible. After all, there were other cloaks in the wizarding world. They could be made from Dimigwai's hair or enchanted with disillusionment charms. But they all wore out eventually. They became threadbare, translucent, useless. The Potter cloak did not. But no one in the family ever advertised that fact. They used it only in emergencies, only when no one was watching, and they never, ever spoke of it outside the family. This was the wisdom of the Potters. They treated the cloak not as a symbol of power, but as a tool for survival. They were not conquerors or seekers of glory. They were quiet folk for the most part. Farmers, auctioneers, the occasional adventurer who knew when to disappear. The cloak passed from father to son, sometimes through a mother's keeping, always in secret, and over the centuries, the legend of the Deathly Hallows became just that, a legend, a story from Beadle the Bard, something that scholars debated and collectors hunted for, never realizing that one of the three objects was resting, folded, in a trunk in a modest cottage in Godric's Hollow. By the time James Potter inherited the cloak, the Potters had become a well-known family in the wizarding world, but their wealth came from generations of successful potion inventions, Sleekeazy's hair potion, among others. Not from any whispered connection to the Hallows. James's father, Fleamont, had used the cloak occasionally, but he was a practical man who saw it as a useful tool for his work. When he passed it to James on his 17th birthday, he told him only that it had been in the family for as long as anyone could remember, and that it was worth taking care of. James, of course, was not a quiet man. He was a marauder, and the cloak became his most prized possession, not because he understood its lineage, but because it let him run through the castle at night, map in hand, with Sirius Remus and Peter at his side. He never thought to question why it never grew sheer. He never wondered why Filch's cat couldn't sense him, why the Whomping Willow's branches seemed to miss him by a hair, why no spell cast in his direction ever so much as ruffled the fabric. He was young, invincible, and convinced that the cloak was simply a very good one. The best on the market, he liked to joke, though he had no idea where it had been bought, and so the cloak spent those years at Hogwarts in constant use, slipping through the halls under the noses of teachers, hiding mischief that would have earned them all expulsion, and never once betraying its secrets. It became part of the Marauders' mythology. The thing that made their map possible, their pranks legendary, their friendship unbreakable. But James did not know he was carrying a Hallow. He did not know that the very cloak his ancestors had used to evade death was now helping a group of teenagers evade Filch. When James died, the cloak passed to Harry, not in a quiet inheritance ceremony, but in a basket on a doorstep, left with a baby and a letter. Dumbledore knew what it was, of course. He had been searching for the Hallows for years, but he said nothing to Hagrid, who wrapped the cloak around the infant Harry and thought only that it was a strange sort of blanket. It was not until years later, when Harry was in his first year, that Dumbledore arranged for the cloak to be returned to its true owner, anonymously at Christmas, with no explanation of its power. That night, Harry put on the cloak for the first time and vanished. Not just his body, but his presence. No one could hear him breathe. No one could see the floorboards bend under his weight. He was, for all practical purposes, not there, and the cloak recognized him. Because it had always belonged to the line of Ignotus, it had waited centuries to be used by a Potter, who would finally understand what it meant. But that understanding would not come until much later. Until Harry had already faced Voldemort, lost loved ones, and walked into the Forbidden Forest with the Resurrection Stone in his hand. The cloak had been with him the whole time, a silent protector, the most faithful of the Hallows. And when the time came to lay down the other two, it was the only one he kept. So what of the cloak story before James? What of the generations of Potters who used it in silence, never boasting, never revealing? They are ghosts now, their names forgotten, their lives unremarkable. But they were the ones who preserved the cloak, who passed it from hand to hand through plagues and wars, through dark ages and golden eras. Always careful, always secret. They are the reason Harry had a chance. And there is one night in particular, one cold night in Godric's Hollow, when that cloak was not just an inheritance, but the only thing standing between a newborn and the Dark Lord's curse. But that is a story that begins not with the cloak, but with a choice made in the dark. A choice that would echo through the halls of Hogwarts, and through the heart of a boy who would one day bear all 3 Hallows and know their weight. The Cloak of Invisibility, passed down through centuries from Ignotus Peverell to the Potter family, should have remained a secret treasure within that bloodline. Yet, on the night of Halloween in 1981, it was not in the hands of James Potter, but in the keeping of Albus Dumbledore. This detail, often glossed over, is the key to understanding Dumbledore's entire relationship with the Deathly Hallows and his long, quiet obsession. Why would James, a proud and protective father, lend out the one object that could have hidden him and Lily from Voldemort? The answer lies in the nature of the cloak itself. When Dumbledore first encountered the Potter family, likely during the Order of the Phoenix meetings, he recognized the cloak for what it truly was. He had spent his youth searching for the Hallows, collecting fragments of lore about the Elder Wand, and he had seen the Resurrection Stone's deceptive promise. But here, in the hands of a young wizard, was the third brother's gift, a cloak that showed no signs of wear, that resisted summoning charms, that never faded. Dumbledore asked to borrow it for study, and James, trusting Dumbledore completely, agreed. The borrowed cloak remained with Dumbledore. Even as the war escalated, he examined it under enchantments, tested its limits, and found it to match the legend perfectly. The cloak was not just an invisibility cloak, it was a Hallow, and for Dumbledore, who had once dreamed of uniting the 3 objects to conquer death, this discovery must have been both exhilarating and terrifying. He knew the Elder Wand's bloody history, he knew the stone's hollow promise, but the cloak was different. It was pure protection, a gift given freely, not taken by force. Its existence proved that the Hallows were real, that the Peverell story was not just a fairy tale. And so, on the night James and Lily went into hiding in Godric's Hollow, the cloak was not with them. Dumbledore had not yet returned it. The decision to borrow it, made with the best intentions, had unintended consequences. When Voldemort arrived at the cottage, James Potter faced him. Without the cloak's concealment, he died trying to buy Lily time. The cloak, sitting in Dumbledore's office at Hogwarts, could not save them. Dumbledore carried that guilt with him for years, but he also carried a deeper realization. The cloak was the third Hallow, and Harry Potter, the son of James, was a descendant of Ignotus Peverell. The boy was the heir to the cloak, and if the legend held any truth, he might one day become the Master of Death. Dumbledore did not tell Harry this. Instead, he returned the cloak to Harry during his first Christmas at Hogwarts, wrapped in a simple note. "Your father left this in my keeping before he died. It is time it was returned to you." No explanation, no mention of Hallows, just a gift, given at the right moment when Harry needed it most. That Christmas, Harry unwrapped the cloak and felt its silken weight. He did not know that it had been studied by Dumbledore, that it had been absent during his parents' final moments, or that it was one of 3 objects that could grant mastery over death. He only knew that it made him invisible, that it felt different from any other cloak he had worn. And as he used it to explore the castle at night, he was unknowingly stepping into a legacy that stretched back 1,000 years. Dumbledore watched from the shadows, perhaps, and saw the pattern beginning to form. Harry had the cloak. He had the protection of his mother's blood, and he had a connection to Voldemort that would lead him to the stone and the wand. All the pieces were moving, though Harry would not see the full picture until the very end. This chapter of the Hallows story is not about power. It is about the weight of decisions and the quiet ways in which objects shape our lives. The cloak was returned to Harry because Dumbledore knew that Harry would need it, not for conquest, but for survival. And in that return, the cycle of the Hallows began its final turn. What Harry would do with the cloak, and how it would protect him in the trials ahead, is a story for another evening. For now, we leave the cloak in Harry's hands, and we turn to the purpose it would serve, a purpose that would redefine what it means to be protected. That is the tale of the next chapter, Chapter 20, Protection and Purpose. Dumbledore held the cloak in his hands. The night he descended upon Godric's Hollow, it was the proof he had been looking for, the final confirmation of a theory that had haunted him since his youth. He stood in the ruins of the Potter cottage, holding the cloak that had once belonged to his friend James. And he understood in that moment that the 3 deathly Hallows were not just a fairy tale. They were real, they were tangible, and here in his hands was the final piece of a set he had once hunted obsessively. But Dumbledore did not keep the cloak for himself. He recognized it for what it truly was. Not a trophy, not a weapon, but a sacred inheritance belonging to a boy who would need it far more than he ever would. So Dumbledore returned the cloak to Harry at the end of his very first year at Hogwarts. It seemed like a simple gesture at the time, a return of a borrowed item. But in hindsight, it was the moment Dumbledore stepped away from the lure of the Hallows entirely. He knew the cloak completed the trio of legendary objects he had sought in his youth. Yet he did not take it. He handed it over, and in doing so, he ensured that when the hunt for the Horcruxes began, Harry, Ron, and Hermione would have access to the single most reliable magical object ever created, the true Cloak of Invisibility. The Horcrux hunt was not a war of open battles. It was a war of shadows, of hiding, of moving unseen through a country that had turned utterly hostile. And in that war, the Hallow Cloak was not a luxury. It was the thin line between survival and capture. There were days when Harry, Ron, and Hermione spent entire stretches of time beneath its folds. Days where to be seen was to be lost forever. The cloak protected them in the deep forests of the English countryside. It shielded them when they infiltrated the Ministry of Magic itself. Walking through the halls of power, hidden from the eyes of Death Eaters who had taken over the government, the cloak allowed them to stand in the same room as their enemies, invisible, untouchable. The cloak became a sanctuary in a world that had become completely dark. It absorbed the weight of their terror. It did not just mask their bodies, it seemed to mask their very presence. There were whispers among the snatches of ghosts moving through the woods, of shadows that felt wrong. The trio was constantly on the verge of being discovered, and every single time, it was the cloak that pulled them back from the brink. It was the cloak that draped over them while they slept. Their only guarantee that they would wake up in the morning. It did not corrupt them. It did not tempt them. It simply held. It proved to be the only object they could entirely trust. This brings us to one of the most remarkable demonstrations of the cloak's power, its ability to shield multiple people. An ordinary invisibility cloak strains the moment. 2 people try to share it, exposing feet, casting odd shadows, tearing at the seams. The Hallow Cloak adapts. It flows. It covers Harry, Ron and Hermione completely, as if the fabric itself understands it must conceal a group for survival. It was never designed for solitary use. It was designed for a family. It was a cloak meant to protect an entire lineage, to keep the Potters hidden from the world. And then there is the thief's downfall, the magical waterfall in the depths of the Gringotts vaults, designed to strip away all enchantments. The moment the trio is caught in its cascade, every spell upon them is supposed to shatter. The false face of Hermione, disguised as Bellatrix Lestrange, melts away. The Polyjuice potion is washed from their veins. But the cloak holds. The thief's downfall, a torrent meant to expose every lie, every magical concealment, slides off the Hallow Cloak as if it were simply water falling over a stone. It proves that the cloak's invisibility is not a spell to be broken. It is a state of being. It is a miracle woven into the fabric itself, immune to the very laws of magic that govern lesser artifacts. Look at the history of the 3 Hallows, and you will see a clear pattern. The Elder Wand brings a bloody downfall to almost every master who holds it. It breeds paranoia, invites duels, and punishes its owner with violence. The Resurrection Stone brings a quiet, devastating downfall, a suicide of the soul. It offers a false hope that drives the user to despair. But the Cloak of Invisibility is the only Hallow that never caused its owner's downfall. Ignotus Peverell did not die in a duel. He did not take his own life. He lived fully, grew old surrounded by his family, and passed the cloak to his son. The cloak brought no ambition, no madness, no desperate longing. It simply offered safety. It offered a life unlived in fear. Why is the cloak the exception? Because it serves a purpose that is entirely different from its siblings. It is not about power over others. It is not about control over death. It is about the wisdom of humility. It is about knowing when to step back, when to hide, when to live quietly and with purpose. The cloak never called for blood. It never promised a false reunion with the lost. It only offered peace, and that is why it survived intact. Unchained by violence, unburdened by grief, passed down through the centuries with love rather than conquest. It was a gift, not a curse. In the final hours of the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry used the cloak to walk to his own death. The cloak draped over him, not as a shield against Voldemort, but as a comfort, a final protection from the cold. It was with him when he stood in the liminal space of King's Cross. It was with him every step of the way. And when the battle was won, Harry did not break the cloak. He did not lose it. He kept it. He understood that the cloak was not meant to be destroyed. It was meant to be worn. It was meant to be passed on. It was the final inheritance of the Potters. This reality brings us to the threshold of the ultimate question. The definition of the title that has haunted the Hallows for centuries. The story of the three brothers is a legend. But what does it truly mean to become the Master of Death? Harry united the Hallows. He held all three, but he chose a path that defied the legend itself. He did not seek to conquer death. He accepted it. We will explore this profound distinction in the next chapter, The Master of Death Defined, because the Hallows never made Harry their master. It was Harry who mastered the Hallows by understanding what they should truly be used for, or in the case of the wand and the stone, what they should never be used for again. The cloak had passed through the fires of Gringotts, survived the treacherous currents of the thief's downfall, and sheltered its true master across countless encounters with death. It was the humblest of the three objects, yet it was the only one that had never failed its purpose. But holding just one Hallow is a very different thing than uniting them, and uniting them is a very different thing from understanding what that union actually means. For centuries, the phrase Master of Death has been whispered by those hungry for power, by those desperate to cheat the grave. The legend is explicit. He who possesses all three Hallows shall master death. But what does that mastery actually look like? Let us deconstruct this myth carefully. Does possessing all three truly make one immortal? The question is the central riddle of the entire series. And the answer is a profound no, if you interpret the word master in the traditional sense of a conqueror or a tyrant. Look at the fate of the brothers. Antioch Peverell had the wand. He died murdered in his bed. Cadmus had the stone. He took his own life. Ignotus had the cloak. He lived to a ripe old age and died peacefully. Even in the tale, the only brother who avoided violence was the one who did not seek to conquer, but merely to hide. The cycle of bloodshed surrounding the Elder Wand proves that the Hallows do not protect you from death if you seek to weaponize them. They do not grant you immunity from the grave. It was Dumbledore who finally cracked the riddle. In his youth, he had sought the Hallows with a fervour that bordered on obsession. He had the wand, he had the cloak in his possession for a time, and he desperately wanted the stone. He wanted to call back his sister, Ariana. He wanted to be the Master of Death, but the pursuit, the desire for power over death, led directly to the duel with Grindelwald, and to the tragedy that defined the rest of his life. By the time Dumbledore reveals the truth to Harry, in the King's Cross afterlife, he has completely reversed his understanding. He tells Harry that the true Master of Death is the one who does not seek to run from death, but who accepts that he must die. The mastery is not in conquering death, but in accepting it as the next great adventure. This is Dumbledore's final interpretation. The Hallows are not tools for immortality. They are a test. The wand tests the desire for power. The stone tests the inability to let go of the past. The The cloak tests the ability to hide from the responsibilities of the living world. To truly master them, one must acknowledge their temptation and ultimately reject it. This brings us to the absolute core of the contrast that defines the entire battle for the soul of the wizarding world. Voldemort's fear of death versus Harry's willingness to embrace it. Voldemort built his entire existence around a frantic, desperate flight from mortality. He created Horcruxes, multiple anchors to life, precisely because he could not fathom the idea of a peaceful end. He pursued the Elder Wand because he believed it was the ultimate weapon to enforce his immortality. He never sought the stone for love. He sought it to understand its power, and he never truly valued the cloak because he saw it merely as a concealment object, ignoring its deeper symbolic weight. Voldemort read the legend of the Hallows and saw a direct path to invincibility. He saw a crown. Harry, in stark contrast, walked willingly into the forbidden forest to die. He wore the cloak, he carried the stone, and he was the true master of the wand. He had united all three, but he did not use them to fight. He used the stone to find the courage to walk forward. He used the cloak to walk unseen, protecting his friends, and he used the wand's true allegiance to ensure his sacrifice was effective. He embraced death, and in doing so, he cheated it in a way Voldemort never could. The moment in the forest is the ultimate answer to the question of what the Master of Death truly is. It is not a title that grants eternal life. It is a state of being earned by someone who is not afraid to die. Harry becomes the Master of Death precisely because he surrendered the very things Voldemort clung to so tightly. He gave up the wand. He walked away from the stone. He kept only the cloak, the symbol of the humble brother, the one who walked with death, not against it. The mythology of the Hallows is a story about the nature of humanity. Do we cling? Do we fight? Or do we accept? The most powerful wizard in the story is the one who let go. But this mastery was not achieved in a vacuum. It came together in a single overwhelming moment when the three objects finally found their true master standing in the shadow of his own grave. To understand exactly how these threads wove together in that critical instant, we have to look at the precise mechanism of the union, how the wand, the stone, and the cloak all fell into the hands of one wizard at the exact time they were needed most. A convergence planned and foreseen by the greatest strategist of the age. That story, the exact moment when the three Hallows were united by Harry Potter, is the focus of our next chapter. It is the story of how the legend finally took its final, truest form. We will turn now to the uniting of the three. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. The previous chapter left us with Dumbledore's final interpretation of the Master of Death. Not a wizard who conquers death, not one who hoards power, but one who accepts mortality. It's a beautiful, quiet truth hidden inside a legend that has been twisted by centuries of ambition. And yet, for all that understanding, the story of the Hallows does not end with a philosophy. It ends with a boy in a forest, carrying three objects that had haunted the wizarding world for 1,000 years. For a brief, almost impossibly narrow window of time, Harry Potter technically owned all three deathly Hallows, not as a collector, not as a conqueror, but as a young man who had stumbled into the inheritance of a legacy he never asked for. The Cloak of Invisibility had been his since his first year at Hogwarts, passed down from his father, James, and ultimately from Ignotus Peverell himself. The Resurrection Stone had been hidden inside the golden snitch Dumbledore left him, a gift that would only reveal itself when Harry was ready, when he was about to face death. And the Elder Wand, the most dangerous of the three, had shifted its allegiance to Harry in a moment that went almost unnoticed. The scuffle at Malfoy Manor, where Harry disarmed Draco Malfoy, who had earlier disarmed Dumbledore. That single act made Harry the wand's true master, even if he didn't realise it at the time. So there it was. The three brothers had created these objects, And now a boy of 17 held them all, but he did not gloat, he did not boast. He did not even fully understand what he possessed. Until the very end, the realization came slowly, and it was not about power, it was about survival. The Hallows were not the key to defeating Voldemort. No wand, no stone, no cloak could do that alone. Voldemort had to be destroyed by his own Horcrux being killed, and by his own spell rebounding. The Elder Wand, for all its terrible strength, refused to kill its true master. The Resurrection Stone could not bring back the dead. The Cloak could only hide you. But together, in that final hour, they offered Harry something else. A way to walk into death without fear, and to come out the other side. It was the moment Harry put the Resurrection Stone into the snitch, turned it over in his fingers, and saw the shades of his parents, Sirius and Lupin, appear beside him in the Forbidden Forest. They walked with him, their presence a comfort that no spell could provide. He was not alone, and when he reached the clearing where Voldemort waited, he did not hide under the cloak. He handed it to Neville, or rather, he left it behind. He would not need it. He was going to face death openly, willingly, as the true master of death. The thematic climax of Harry walking to his death is not a moment of despair. It is a moment of profound acceptance. He had united the Hallows, not by force, not by cunning, but by inheritance and by choice. And in that uniting, he understood that the power of the Hallows was never about dominating life or avoiding death. It was about the courage to let go. He had the Elder Wand's allegiance, but he refused to use it for vengeance. He had the stone, but he did not keep it to summon the dead for his own comfort. He had the cloak, but he handed it away, knowing that true invisibility is not about hiding from the world, but about walking through it with integrity. And so he walked into the forest beneath the dark canopy, with the whispers of his loved ones around him. The wand remained in his hand, but it was silent. The stone stayed in his pocket, but its magic was spent. The cloak was no longer his to carry. In that moment, Harry Potter was the master of death, not because he could not die, but because he was willing to die for the people he loved. And that, more than any spell or artifact, is what the Hallows truly offered. What happened next, when the killing curse struck, and Harry found himself in a strange white place between worlds, is a story that requires its own chapter. That place, the King's Cross Limbo, would reveal the final secrets of the Hallows and of Voldemort's soul. But for now, let the image of that walk linger. A boy, alone but not alone, carrying the weight of an ancient myth and choosing to lay it down. So Harry Potter, for a few moments, was the master of death. He held the cloak of invisibility, which had been his since his first year. He had just opened the golden snitch and taken the resurrection stone into his hand, and he had won the allegiance of the Elder Wand when he disarmed Draco Malfoy back at Malfoy Manor. 3 objects, 1 owner. The legend said that the one who united them would conquer death itself. But then Harry walked into the Forbidden Forest alone. He dropped the stone in the grass. He pulled the cloak tightly around his shoulders, and he let Voldemort cast the killing curse. That moment was not a failure of the Hallows. It was the fulfillment of their deepest truth. The Hallows were never meant to be weapons. They were never meant to grant immortality in the way the legend suggested. They were a test of character, and Harry passed it by accepting his own death. What came next is a place that exists between worlds, a liminal space, a waiting room perhaps, for souls who have not yet fully crossed over. For Harry, it took the form of King's Cross Station, but not the bustling, crowded King's Cross he knew. This one was clean, empty, almost sterile. The light was soft and diffuse, like early morning fog, and on the floor, under a bench, there was a small, shriveled creature, a baby-like thing, crying and whimpering. It was the fragment of Voldemort's soul that had been clinging to Harry for 17 years. And then Dumbledore was there, not as a ghost, not as a portrait, but as something more real than either. He was whole, clear-eyed and calm, and he smiled at Harry with a warmth that seemed to fill the entire station. This is the moment where the entire mythology of the Deathly Hallows is finally laid bare. Dumbledore confessed everything: his youthful ambition, his pursuit of the Hallows, his obsession with the Elder Wand and the Resurrection Stone. He told Harry that the legend of the three brothers was just that, a fairy tale. The objects were created by the Peverell brothers themselves, using their own immense magical skill. Death did not gift them. Death did not even exist in the way the story pretended. The third brother, Ignotus, did not hide from death. He simply lived a full life and died naturally. The cloak was not a shield against the inevitable. It was a symbol of the wisdom that comes from accepting mortality. The Elder Wand, Dumbledore explained, had been his greatest temptation. He had sought it in his youth, believing that with it, he could defeat Grindelwald. And he did defeat Grindelwald, but at a terrible cost. The wand became a burden. It brought nothing but bloodshed and paranoia. Every owner of the Elder Wand was eventually killed or defeated. The wand did not grant power, it demanded it, and it consumed anyone who tried to hold it. The Resurrection Stone was even more cruel. Dumbledore had used it himself long ago to try to see his sister Ariana. He said he was not sure whether the stone actually brought back her spirit, or whether it simply conjured a projection from the user's deepest longing. Either way, what returned was never enough. It was a hollow echo, a reminder of loss, not a true reunion. Cadmus Peverell, the second brother, had used the stone to bring back the woman he loved, but she was cold and distant. He could not bear the imitation of life, and he took his own life to join her. The stone did not heal grief, it deepened it. And the cloak? The cloak was the only one of the three that never betrayed its owner. Ignotus lived a long and peaceful life. He passed the cloak down through generations, and it remained a secret, a quiet heirloom that hid its owner from the world, but never demanded anything in return. The cloak was not about conquering death. It was about living fully, unseen when necessary, but always aware that life was finite. This is the revelation that Dumbledore gave Harry in that Limbo. The Hallows were not a shortcut to power. They were a test of whether you would seek to dominate death, or whether you would accept it. The true master of death, Dumbledore said, is the one who does not seek to run away from death, the one who understands that there are far worse things than dying, the one who is willing to sacrifice himself for others. Harry had already passed that test. He had walked into the forest willingly, knowing he was going to die. He had done it to protect his friends, to destroy the last Horcrux, to end Voldemort's reign, and because of that choice, he had earned the right to return. Dumbledore gave him a choice. He could board a train that would take him onward, whatever that meant, or he could go back to the living world and finish what he started. It was not even a difficult decision for Harry. He had work to do. People he loved were still fighting. Voldemort was still alive, and Harry had only just begun to understand what he was truly capable of, so he chose to return. He left the clean, empty King's Cross, left Dumbledore standing there with that knowing smile, left the whimpering soul fragment on the floor. He chose life, not because he feared death, but because he had accepted it and moved beyond it. When he opened his eyes, he was lying in the Forbidden Forest, staring up at the dark canopy of trees. The Resurrection Stone was lost, dropped somewhere in the grass. The cloak was still wrapped around him, and the Elder Wand was now his. Though he would never use it again in anger, the Hallows had served their purpose. They had taught him what it meant to be the master of death. But the story was not over. The Elder Wand still lay in Dumbledore's tomb, waiting for its final fate. The battle still raged at Hogwarts, and Voldemort still believed he had won. The greatest confrontation was yet to come, a duel that would decide the future of the wand, the school, and the wizarding world itself. And in that final duel, the Hallows would play their last role, not as objects of power, but as symbols of the choices that had defined Harry's journey from the very beginning. We left Harry Potter in that strange white space between life and death, a place Dumbledore called King's Cross. It was there that the final illusions were stripped away. The Hallows were never a gift from death, but a creation of men, a test of intention rather than a shortcut to power. Harry had walked willingly into the forest. He had let the killing curse take him, trusting that his death would buy the defenders of Hogwarts a chance. And because he gave himself freely, because he did not fight or hide, the curse could not truly hold him. He came back. He returned to a body still breathing, a heart still beating, and a war still raging. Now the battlefield had narrowed to the Great Hall, and Voldemort, who still believed he had mastered the Elder Wand, had no idea that his victory was already an illusion. The mechanics of the Elder Wand are simple, but they require a kind of honesty that Voldemort could never possess. The wand does not care about lineage. It does not care about blood status. It does not care about fear or intimidation. It only cares about conquest, true conquest. The wand transfers its allegiance the moment its current master is defeated, and it does not accept a stolen allegiance. It only accepts a proven one. Voldemort believed he had earned the wand when he killed Severus Snape. He assumed that the death of the previous master was the only requirement, but he was wrong. Snape was never the master of the Elder Wand. He never defeated Dumbledore. Draco Malfoy did. On the Astronomy Tower, a boy disarmed Albus Dumbledore, and without knowing it, Draco became the wand's master. He never possessed it physically. But magic does not care about physical possession. The wand knew. And months later, at Malfoy Manor, Harry Potter wrenched Draco's wand from his hand. He did not know it at the time. He was simply trying to escape. But in that single act of disarming, the Elder Wand recognized its true master. Harry had never held the wand. He had never seen it. But it answered to him. It had been answering to him the entire time. Voldemort was parading it through the castle. So when Voldemort stood in the Great Hall, surrounded by the survivors of the battle, and cast the killing curse at Harry Potter for the very last time, he was not aiming at a helpless target. He was aiming at his own master. The Elder Wand felt the connection. It felt the wild, protective magic that still clung to Harry, the same sacrificial magic his mother had cast so many years ago, now renewed by his own willing death in the forest. And the wand made a choice. It would not harm its master. The green light erupted from the tip of the Elder Wand, the most devastating spell known to wizardkind, fired from the most powerful weapon ever created, and it did nothing. It could not touch Harry. Instead, the wand turned its power against the man who commanded it falsely. The curse rebounded. It struck Voldemort in the chest, and the man who had torn his soul into 7 pieces, who had committed murders without counting them, who had tried to conquer death itself, fell backward with a mundane finality. His body hit the floor. The war was over. There is an exquisite, almost unbearable poetry in the way Voldemort died. He spent his entire existence chasing immortality. He destroyed his soul for it. He drank unicorn blood. He created Horcruxes. He performed rituals so dark that even the Death Eaters did not fully understand them. And in the end, he was killed by the very weapon he believed would protect him forever. The Elder Wand, the Death Stick, the Wand of Destiny, the object that promised absolute power to whoever held it, betrayed him in the most complete way possible. It did not just fail him, it destroyed him. Voldemort understood violence. He understood fear. He understood how to take things by force. But he never understood that some things cannot be taken. The wand chooses the wizard, and the Elder Wand had chosen Harry Potter. The most powerful weapon in history, the symbol of conquest and bloodshed, turned against its wielder because he had not earned it. It is the perfect end for a man who believed he could steal the secrets of life and death. Harry stood over the body, holding the wand that had just killed the most dangerous wizard of the age. He could feel its power. It was not a gentle feeling. It was a hungry, insistent thrum. A promise that with this wand, no force in the world could stand against him. He could repair his own wand. He could become the most powerful wizard alive. He could hold the wizarding world in the palm of his hand. But that is not what he wanted. He had seen what the wand did to its masters. He had seen Dumbledore's hand, blackened and withered from touching the ring that contained the Resurrection Stone. He had seen the greed in Gregorovich's eyes when he possessed it. He had seen the arrogance of Antioch Peverell, murdered in his sleep for boasting. The wand was not a gift. It was a curse dressed in glory. And Harry understood that true mastery of death was not the power to kill, but the wisdom to stop. He made a choice. He would not keep the wand. He would not pass it on. He would break the cycle of power that had begun centuries ago, when the first brother asked death for a weapon that could never be defeated. That choice, what he did with the wand, with the stone and with the cloak, is a story of its own. It is the quiet aftermath of victory, the moment when a hero must decide what kind of legacy he will leave behind. The duel is over. The battle is won. But the temptation of the Hallows lingers. And the hardest test is not dying for what you believe in. It is living with the power to change everything and choosing instead to lay it down. The final duel is over. The killing curse has backfired for the last time. And Harry Potter stands in the ruins of Hogwarts holding the Elder Wand. It is a strange kind of victory. Voldemort is gone, but the weapon that made the final victory possible is still there, vibrating with 1,000 years of violent history. You would think that in the aftermath, Harry would drop the wand, that he would recoil from it, but instead he holds it, not as a trophy, but as a problem to be solved. The wand that won the battle is the wand that has never known peace. It is the Death Stick, and its wood is soaked in the ambition of every dark wizard who has ever touched it. Let us look at what Harry did next, because it defines him more clearly than any duel ever could. He did not use the Elder Wand to crown himself. He did not use it to rebuild the castle. He did not use it to hunt down the remnants of the Death Eaters. He used it for a single, quiet, almost domestic act. His own Holy Wand, the twin of Voldemort's, the wand that had chosen him. It was snapped in two during the flight from Godric's Hollow, broken by the very magic that had tried to kill him. A piece of his identity lay in splinters, and with the Elder Wand in his hand, Harry Potter performed a spell that rewrote the purpose of the most dangerous object in the wizarding world. He whispered a simple reparo. The wood knitted together. The phoenix feather core reignited. A wand was restored. Think deeply on the weight of that choice. The Elder Wand, forged for conquest, for dominating the wills of other wizards, was used to heal. It was used to mend a broken bond between a wizard and his original partner. It was an act of radical humility. The most powerful wand in the history of magic was reduced to a tool of repair, and it obeyed without question. This single spell is the fulcrum of the entire legend. The Elder Wand is not the master of death. It is a servant, and Harry proved it by making it serve a purpose far below its supposed station. But the decision of what to actually with the wand required a different kind of courage, because here is where the story splits, depending on how you know it, and both versions carry the same heavy truth, just in different shapes. The cinematic version is the one most people see. It is dramatic. It is final. Harry stands on the broken bridge at Hogwarts. He looks down at the Elder Wand, and with a clean, sharp motion, he snaps it in two. The pieces spiral down into the ravine, lost to the world forever. It is an act of defiance. He is drawing a line in the sand and saying, "This story ends now." He refuses to let the wand exist as a temptation for the next dark wizard. He refuses to be its keeper. He physically destroys the chain of conquest. But the book version is quieter. It is more deliberate, more chilling in its trust. Harry does not snap the wand. Instead, he walks back into Dumbledore's tomb. He places the Elder Wand back inside, laying it across the old headmaster's body. He returns the wand to the man from whom it was stolen. Why would he do such a thing? Because Harry realizes something essential about the nature of power. The wand's allegiance only transfers through defeat. If Harry keeps the wand, every ambitious duelist for the rest of his life will come looking for him. He will become a target simply for existing. The cycle will continue as long as the wand has a living master to challenge. But if Harry dies a natural death, having never been defeated in a duel, the Elder Wand's power will die with him. Its last true allegiance will never be won. By placing it in the tomb, he is not just hiding it, he is ensuring that its lineage ends without violence. He is ending the cycle of power by choosing obscurity over glory. Both decisions are the same, deep down in the marrow. The film version destroys the object. The book version disarms the legend. Both reject the inheritance of blood. And let us be honest about why this was so essential for the future of the wizarding world. The Elder Wand was not a blessing. It was a curse dressed up as a treasure. Every single major conflict in the century leading up to Harry's time was tied to it, or to the obsession with it. Grindelwald built a war around it. Dumbledore was tempted by it. Voldemort was consumed by it. The wand is a magnet for destruction. As long as it existed as a known object, there would always be someone trying to unite the Hallows. There would always be a duel waiting for the master. Harry Potter understood that true power does not require a symbol. He did not need the Elder Wand to be a great wizard. He did not need it to protect his family. The wand was a liability written in wood. By breaking the cycle, he was not just saving himself, he was saving the next generation. He was protecting his children from a legacy of pursuit. He was telling the world that the chase for the Hallows was a dead end. The only way to master death is to walk willingly into its arms when the time comes, not to hoard weapons against the inevitable. The Wand of Destiny is finally without a destiny. The track of blood is over. But what of the other Hallow? The one he carried into the Forbidden Forest. The stone he slipped in his pocket and then let fall. That is a different kind of loss. The wand was a weapon. The stone was a memory. And Harry knew that holding on to memories too tightly could drive a person mad. So he dropped the Resurrection Stone in the heart of the forest. He left it there, lying among the roots and the damp leaves. He did not want to see his parents again. He did not want to call them back from the cold place between life and death. He accepted that they were gone, and that acceptance is the final stage of mastery. But the stone is still out there, buried in the earth of the Forbidden Forest. No one knows exactly where it lies, and maybe that is the place where the most painful truths of the Hallows are waiting to echo. The story of the Lost Stone is the story of learning to let go. After Harry snapped the Elder Wand in the film, or returned it to Dumbledore's tomb in the book, he stood in the rubble of the Great Hall, his heart still pounding with the last echoes of battle. He had won. Not because he was the most powerful wizard alive, but because he understood something Voldemort never could. The Elder Wand, the most dangerous Hallow, was no longer the source of his survival. It was a weapon that demanded blood, and Harry refused to feed it. But there was another Hallow, one he had held only hours before, a simple black stone that had brought him the closest thing to comfort in his darkest moment. And now that stone was lost. You might think, after everything, that Harry would have wanted to keep it. After all, the Resurrection Stone had given him the sight of his parents, his godfather, and his beloved professor. It had allowed him to walk into the Forbidden Forest with courage, not as a boy afraid of death, but as a son walking alongside his family. The stone had fulfilled its purpose, but its purpose was not to be possessed. It was not a toy, nor a treasure to be stashed away for lonely nights. The Resurrection Stone, more than any other Hallow, carried a terrible burden. It did not bring back the dead. It summoned echoes, shadows, phantoms that existed in a state between life and death. And those echoes, as the legend of Cadmus Peverell taught, were never truly happy to be called. So Harry made a deliberate choice. He dropped the stone in the Forbidden Forest, right there among the roots and moss and fallen leaves. And he walked away. He did not look back. He did not mark the spot. He did not whisper a spell to find it again later. He let it go. And here is the question that lingers. Why? Why would the Master of Death, the boy who united all three Hallows, voluntarily discard one? The answer lies in what the stone represented, and what Harry had learned about the nature of death itself. The Resurrection Stone was never meant to be a comfort object. It was a trap. Cadmus Peverell, the second brother, used it to summon a woman he loved, a woman who had died before they could marry. But the shade that appeared was not her. It was cold, silent, and miserable. It existed only because he willed it. But it could not truly be with him. He could not touch her, could not hold her, could not share a life with a ghost. So Cadmus, driven mad by the gap between what he wanted and what he had, took his own life to join her in death. The stone did not bring him peace. It brought him obsession. Harry understood this tragedy better than most. He had seen the shade of his parents and others in the forest, and they had been exactly what he needed at that moment. But he also knew that if he kept the stone, he would be tempted to use it again. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but someday when grief crept in, he might hold it and speak the names of the dead once more, and then again and again. It would become a crutch, a way to avoid the painful but necessary work of moving forward. The dead had their own rest, and Harry had no right to disturb it. There is a poetry in the way the stone vanished. It was a small dark pebble, easily lost in a forest of countless stones and roots. It could have been picked up by a centaur, a thestral, a passing student, or simply buried deeper by rain and time. But Harry did not care where it went. He did not want it to be found, not by himself, not by anyone else. The Resurrection Stone was, in a very real sense, an instrument of torture. It offered the illusion of reunion, but the reality was always hollow. The dead cannot come back, and to try to force them is to deny the natural order, to refuse the gift of a life that is finite and precious, because it ends. That is why the third brother, Ignotus Peverell, was the wisest. He asked death for a cloak, not a weapon or a resurrection. He wanted to hide from death until he was ready, not to cheat death indefinitely. He lived a full life, died old, and met death as an equal. He did not try to bring anyone back. He did not try to conquer with power. He simply accepted that death is a part of life. Harry, by losing the stone, finally completed the lesson that Dumbledore had taught him at King's Cross. The Master of Death is not the one who possesses the Hallows. The Master of Death is the one who does not fear it, who does not cling to the past, and who lets the dead rest in peace. Now imagine that moment after the battle, the dust settling, the cries of victory and grief mingling in the air. Harry could have searched for the stone. He could have spent hours combing the forest floor, using magic to locate the faint trace of its enchantment. He could have pocketed it, taken it back to Grindelwald Place, perhaps worn it on a chain around his neck, a secret talisman. But he did none of that. He deliberately allowed it to be lost, because he knew that searching for it would be a form of looking back, and looking back, as the story of Lot's wife reminds us, can turn you into something that cannot move forward. There is a danger in revisiting the dead, not the danger of grief itself, which is natural and healthy, but the danger of becoming so entangled with the past that you stop living in the present. Harry had seen that danger firsthand. He had seen Voldemort's obsession with immortality, his refusal to accept death, his endless search for ways to cheat the end. And Harry had also seen Dumbledore's own youthful pursuit of the Hallows, his fascination with the Resurrection Stone after his sister's death, which almost led him down a dark road. Dumbledore had warned Harry about the power of the Hallows, but more than that, he had warned about the temptation to use them for selfish ends. So the stone lies now somewhere in the Forbidden Forest. Perhaps it is still there, hidden under years of leaf litter and growth. Perhaps it was carried away by a creature, or perhaps it simply sank into the earth, forgotten, and that is how it should be. The Resurrection Stone is not a treasure to be sought. It is a reminder that some doors are meant to remain closed. Harry chose to leave it behind, not because he did not love his family, but because he loved them enough to let them go. And in that decision, Harry became something more than just the boy who lived. He became the man who understood that true strength is not in wielding power, but in knowing when to set it down. The Elder Wand was broken or returned. The Cloak of Invisibility would stay in the Potter family, passed down through generations, a gift that could not be corrupted. But the Resurrection Stone, the Hallow that promised to bring the dead back, was voluntarily surrendered to the earth. It is a fitting end for a Hallow that was never meant to be held for very long. Soon we will turn to the one Hallow that Harry kept, the Cloak of Invisibility. But before we do, let the story of the lost stone settle. There is a quiet lesson there, whispered through the trees of the Forbidden Forest. The dead are not gone. They live in memory, in love, in the way we carry them forward. But they are not ours to summon. They belong to the stillness of what has been, and to the hope of what will be, beyond the veil. Harry understood that, and so he let the stone fall, and he did not look back. After the Resurrection Stone slipped from Harry Potter's fingers into the damp earth of the Forbidden Forest, a profound silence settled over the glade. The shades of his parents, of Sirius, of Remus, had faded, but they left behind a distinct warmth, a confirmation that the choice he had just made was the right one. He had called them forth not to cling to them, but to gather his courage. The stone had fulfilled its purpose in the most heartbreakingly beautiful of ways, and Harry understood, with the clarity that only a brush with death can provide, that to seek that stone again would be to undo that very gift. It was the stone of a closed book, but as he pulled the Elder Wand from beneath his robes, his fingers brushed against something else, something soft, something familiar, the Cloak of Invisibility. Why did Harry Potter keep the Cloak of Invisibility as his sole inheritance? The answer is woven into the very fabric of the man he became. The Elder Wand was a weapon. It was a responsibility he did not want, a lineage of violence he was determined to end. The Resurrection Stone was a ghost, an echo of a life he could never truly have back. But the cloak was his father. It was the rustle of silk in the dead of night at number 4, Privet Drive. It was the breath held still in the restricted section of the library. It was the protection that had allowed him to save a friend, to spy on a dragon, to walk through the halls of his enemies with nothing but the faith that he would be unseen. The cloak was not a weapon, it was a sanctuary. Harry did not choose the cloak because it was powerful. He chose it because it was good. It is the only Hallow that can be used without corruption. It conceals, but it never deceives the wearer. It protects without demanding a price. The Elder Wand must be won, again and again at the cost of blood. The Resurrection Stone demands that you look into the eyes of the dead and feel the cold of their absence. But the cloak simply wraps around you. It is a second skin. It asks nothing of you except that you live. Consider the madness of the 3 brothers gathered at that riverbank. Antioch sought power and died a fool in an inn. Cadmus sought love and died by his own hand in despair. Ignotus sought to live his life without interference. He was the wise one. He understood that the greatest defiance of death was not a promise of immortality, but a full, rich, quiet life. The cloak is the symbol of that quiet life. It is the opposite of conquest. Conquest demands that everyone see your power. The cloak demands that no one sees you at all. It is the Hallow of the observer, of the secret guardian, of the soul that values experience over reputation. When Harry held all 3 Hallows in his hands, he was presented with the very choice that the tale of the 3 brothers lays out for its listener. Do you want to dominate the world? The wand offers that path. Do you want to reclaim the dead? The stone whispers that promise. Or do you simply want to live? The cloak is the only answer that does not end in tragedy. Harry, shaped by a childhood in a cupboard and a lifetime of fighting for the right to be ordinary, chose life. The cloak did not make him the master of death because he could not be touched. It made him the master of death because he understood that to live is to eventually die. And the cloak allowed him to live that truth on his own terms. It is the symbol of a life lived fully and protected, rather than a life of conquest. And so the tradition of Ignotus Peverell continued. The cloak did not end up in a museum. It did not rest in a tomb. It was not lost to the forest like the stone. It remained in the family. The cloak is the only Hallow that actively fulfills its intended purpose across the generations. It is not a burden to be passed down, but a gift. Years later, on a snowy Christmas morning, or perhaps tucked into a pocket on the bustling platform of King's Cross, while a younger son complained about the lack of a second-hand bookstore. The moment came for Harry to pass the inheritance on to James Sirius Potter. The cloak is not just a magical artifact, it is a physical legacy. It is an unbroken chain stretching back over a millennium. Ignotus gave it to his son. That son gave it to his. Down through the generations, to Fleamont, to Euphemia, to James, to Lily, and then to Harry. The very fabric holds the history of the family within its folds. Harry is not just giving his son a tool for mischief, though surely it will be used for that. He is giving him a birthright. He is giving him the same chance he had. To walk through a hostile world, protected by the love of his father. It is the continuation of the Peverell tradition, a tradition that honours humility over hubris and longevity over conquest. When Harry looked at James Sirius, he likely saw the mischief of his own father, James Potter, but in handing over the cloak, Harry was forging a new legacy. He was confirming that the cloak was never meant to be a tool for a war. It was meant to be a blanket, a safe harbour, a life. The cloak is the only Hallow that asks for nothing in return. The Elder Wand demands mastery. The Resurrection Stone demands obsession. The cloak simply requires you to put it on. It is a promise. You are enough. You do not need to fight every battle. You do not need to conquer every enemy. You just need to live, fully, truthfully, protected. That is the wisdom of the third brother. That is the wisdom of Harry Potter. It is the only Hallow worth keeping. But not every wizard who encountered the Hallows walked away with such clarity. The allure of the Elder Wand is almost impossible to resist. It whispers promises of power, of justice, of a world set right by force. It was a whisper that Albus Dumbledore knew intimately. The story of the Deathly Hallows cannot be truly understood without looking at the deepest scar on Dumbledore's soul. The summer of 1899, the golden friendship with Gellert Grindelwald, the shared dream of ruling the wizarding world for its own good. The one tragic night that shattered everything and left the Elder Wand to carve a bloody path across Europe. The cloak tells us how to live. The wand tells us how to fall. And the greatest wizard of the age fell harder than most. That is the story we turn to next. The story of Dumbledore and Grindelwald's failure. The Cloak of Invisibility was the only Hallow Harry chose to keep, and in that single decision, he proved himself worthy of an inheritance that had eluded the two most brilliant minds ever to study the legend. The wisdom of Ignotus Peverell, passed down through the centuries, was not a wisdom of conquest. It was a wisdom of restraint. Ignotus did not demand a weapon that could never be defeated. He did not demand a relic that could pull the dead back across the veil. He simply asked to walk away from death's pursuit, to live his life on his own terms, and to die when the time was right. Harry understood that. He understood that the cloak was never meant to be a tool of ambition. It was a sanctuary. That the story of the Hallows is not just the story of Harry's triumph. It is a cautionary tale written in the lives of two men who burned brighter than almost any wizard in history, and whose fall cast a shadow that stretched across the entire 20th century. We have to look back now at the failure of Albus Dumbledore and Gellert Grindelwald, because their story is the dark heart of the Hallows legend, a cautionary verse that proves the moral of the tale. When they met, they were not the enemies the world would later know them as. They were two young men of staggering talent who recognized in each other a kindred spirit, a rare intellect that could match their own. In the summer of 1899, they sat together in Godric's Hollow, mapping out a new world order, and at the heart of that dream was the symbol of the Deathly Hallows. They signed their letters. With it, they made it the standard of their revolution. They were going to force the wizarding world and the Muggle world into a new era of peace. For the greater good, that phrase, for the greater good, it was a beautiful lie they told themselves to justify an ugly ambition. The philosophy itself was a corruption of their highest ideals. It was the idea that the ends justified the means, that the wise should rule the foolish. That might made right as long as it was wielded with noble intentions. And it was this philosophy that gave them the permission they needed to chase the Hallows not as spiritual artifacts, but as tools of domination. Grindelwald wanted the Elder Wand. He wanted the power to break the statute of secrecy, to establish wizarding supremacy, to bend the shape of the world to his will. Dumbledore, for his part, was just as deeply ensnared. But what did Albus want? He wanted the Resurrection Stone. He wanted to see his mother. He wanted to bring back his sister, Ariana. He wanted to undo his own deepest shame. The Hallows, for Dumbledore, were a promise that he could set right what had gone so terribly wrong. He could bring his family back. He could erase the greatest tragedy of his life. But the tragedy had not yet fully claimed its victim. That would come in the duel. The fight between Aberforth, Albus, and Grindelwald. The moment the three-way clash of wills and wands sent a curse flying wildly through the air, and Ariana Dumbledore, caught in the crossfire of her brothers and her brother's lover, fell dead. The hubris of the Hallows had claimed its first great casualty in the modern age. It is a retrospective that is painful to contemplate. Here were the two greatest wizards of their generation, men who could perform feats of magic that others could only dream of, and yet they could never truly master the Hallows. They could not master them because they approached them with the wrong heart. The Hallows demand a surrender. The Elder Wand demands that its master be willing to accept that power is a burden and a temptation. The Resurrection Stone demands that the user understand that the dead belong to the past. The Cloak demands a willingness to hide, not out of fear, but out of reverence for a life lived quietly and fully. Dumbledore and Grindelwald were incapable of surrender. They were conquerors. They saw the Hallows as a summit to be reached, a trophy to be claimed. They did not see them as a path to be walked. Their youthful obsession with the legend blinded them to its true meaning. The Master of Death is not the one who defeats death. The Master of Death is the one who accepts death as a natural end, who does not try to cling to power or summon back the shades of the departed. Dumbledore spent the rest of his life atoning for that failure. He never touched the Resurrection Stone again, until the moment he placed it inside the golden snitch for Harry. He feared its pull. He knew intellectually that it was a cruel imitation of life, but emotionally, he never fully trusted himself with it. He possessed the Elder Wand for years, but he was always preparing for its defeat. He knew he was not its master in the way that mattered. He knew it had corrupted him once, and he lived in constant vigilance against its influence. Grindelwald, locked in his tower at Nurmengard, ultimately refused to give Voldemort the information he wanted about the Elder Wand. Was it defiance, or was it a final silent act of penance? Perhaps he too understood in his final years that the Hallows, for all their power, could never give him what he truly wanted. They could not give him back the friendship of Albus Dumbledore. They could not undo the death of a girl he had helped to kill. This is the core of their failure. They were not worthy of the Hallows, because the Hallows do not measure a wizard by their power. They measure a wizard by their character. And in the summer of 1899, when their friendship was at its most intense, their character was found wanting. Dumbledore would spend a century trying to rebuild his, but he would never truly master the Hallows. He would only hold them, waiting for someone else to show him how. Which brings us at last to the final confrontation of ideas. The Elder Wand versus the Horcrux. The Hallows versus the Horcruxes. The philosophy of accepting death versus the desperate, grasping obsession with cheating it. In the next chapter, we will explore this ultimate contrast. How Voldemort's search for immortality, through the darkest magic imaginable, stood in direct opposition to the light that the Hallows were meant to represent. The Hallows allowed Harry to walk calmly into the forest. The Horcruxes forced Voldemort to cling to a life that was never truly his. The Hallows versus the Horcruxes was not just a battle of magic, it was a battle of souls, and only one set offered any hope of peace. The previous chapter left us with the image of two of the most brilliant wizards of their age, Albus Dumbledore and Gellert Grindelwald, each failing to truly master the Deathly Hallows. Their pursuit of those three legendary objects was driven by ambition, by a need to reshape the world according to their own designs. And yet, in the end, neither of them could hold the Hallows together for long. Grindelwald was defeated, Dumbledore died with a cursed hand, and the Hallows scattered once more. It is a profound irony that the very qualities that made them powerful, their intellect, their vision, their willingness to bend rules, also made them incapable of understanding what the Hallows truly required. Because the Hallows demand something far more subtle than raw power. They demand a soul that is whole. And that leads us directly to the ultimate thematic battle of the entire Harry Potter story. The conflict between the Deathly Hallows and the Horcruxes. On one side, you have Voldemort's anchors to life, objects of division, created by tearing his soul into fragments. On the other side, you have objects of unity. The Hallows, which were designed to bring together what is broken, to offer mastery over death itself, but only to one who is complete. Think about what a Horcrux is. It is a physical object that holds a piece of a soul, ripped away through murder. To create even one, a wizard must commit the most terrible act of violence against their own spirit. And Voldemort did that not once, but 7 times. He deliberately shattered his soul into 7 pieces, each one a prison for a fragment of his humanity. The result was that he became less than human. He lost the ability to understand love, to feel remorse, to trust. His body became a vessel for a hollowed-out consciousness, sustained only by fear and domination. Every Horcrux he made further divided him, weakening his core self, even as he tried to strengthen his hold on life. Now compare that to the Hallows. Consider the Elder Wand. Its power is legendary. It can win any duel, perform magic beyond the reach of ordinary wands. But look at its history. Every owner who sought it for conquest, for dominance, died violently. Antioch Peverell boasted and was murdered in his sleep. Gregorovitch claimed it, but lost it to Grindelwald. Grindelwald was defeated by Dumbledore, and Dumbledore himself was disarmed by Draco Malfoy, setting in motion the final chain of events. The Elder Wand does not reward arrogance. It rewards mastery, yes, but mastery born from rightful ownership, not from theft or murder. And the only way to truly hold it is to be willing to let it go. Then there is the Resurrection Stone. It pretends to offer reunion with the dead, but it is a cruel illusion. The shades it summons are not truly alive. They are cold echoes, pulled from a realm they should not leave. Cadmus Peverell used it to try to bring back his lost love, and the result was so unbearable that he took his own life. The stone does not bring back the dead. It drags the living toward death. It requires a soul that is already whole enough to resist its pull, or else it destroys you. And finally, the Cloak of Invisibility. It is the only Hallow that never fails, never corrupts. It offered Ignotus Peverell exactly what he asked for. A way to hide from death, not to conquer it, but to live a full life on his own terms. The cloak demands nothing but humility. It requires no murder, no ambition, no desperate need. It simply serves its owner faithfully, generation after generation. It is the Hallow of acceptance. So the contrast is stark. Voldemort's entire philosophy was about fragmentation. He broke himself into pieces to avoid death. He created Horcruxes to ensure that even if his body was destroyed, his soul fragments would survive. But in doing so, he made himself incapable of ever being whole. He could never master the Hallows, because he had no unified self to offer them. The Hallows cannot be wielded by a shattered soul. They require a person who is integrated, who can hold the Elder Wand without being consumed by its power, who can touch the Resurrection Stone without succumbing to despair, who can wear the cloak without hiding from their own mortality. Harry Potter, by contrast, was whole. He had been through trauma, loss and pain, but he never allowed his soul to be torn. He felt everything: love, grief, anger, fear, and he processed it. He was not afraid to die. That is the key. When Dumbledore tells Harry that the true master of death is one who accepts that death is inevitable, he is describing exactly what Voldemort could never understand. Voldemort tried to defeat death by dividing his soul. Harry defeated death by embracing it, and that is why the Hallows triumphed. over the Horcruxes, not because of raw magical power. The Elder Wand was used against Voldemort. Yes, but it was Harry's willingness to die that made the wand choose him. The Resurrection Stone gave Harry the courage to walk into the Forbidden Forest. But it was his own whole heart that allowed him to let the stone go afterward. The cloak protected him during the final battle, but it was his choice to break the cycle of power that sealed Voldemort's fate. The Horcruxes were built on fear. The Hallows were built on understanding. Voldemort's objects were anchors that dragged him deeper into darkness. The Hallows were tools that, when used wisely, could lead a person to peace. It is a beautiful and tragic irony that the greatest dark wizard of all time spent his entire life trying to avoid death, yet he never even considered the one path that could have given him true mastery over it. He was too busy tearing himself apart to realize that the only way to conquer death is to first be truly alive. And after the Battle of Hogwarts, after the Elder Wand was broken or returned to the tomb, after the Resurrection Stone was left in the dirt of the Forbidden Forest, and after the cloak was passed on to Harry's eldest sons, the story of the Hallows did not end. It simply transformed, because the legend of the three brothers is not just a fairy tale, it is a living legacy, one that continues to echo through the generations of the Peverell line and through the choices made by those who come after. The question of what it truly means to be the master of death is not answered in a single battle. It is answered over centuries, in the quiet moments of decision, in the refusal to seek power for its own sake, and in the willingness to pass on wisdom rather than weapons. And that is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter. The legacy left behind by the three brothers, and what it means for the wizarding world, long after the names of the Peverells have faded into myth. The Hallows and the Horcruxes stood as two opposing philosophies, but their stories were never truly separate. They wound around each other like the branches of the Elder Wand itself, a twisted pair of destinies that finally converged in the heart of the Forbidden Forest. One was born of division, a soul shattered into fragments to cheat death. The other was born of union, three objects meant to command death, yet they demanded a whole soul to wield them. Voldemort's path was one of endless splitting, while Harry's was one of gathering and then letting go. And it is in that letting go that the legacy of the three brothers reaches its true conclusion. The Peverell family, if we look back across the centuries, left more than a legend. They left a warning carved into the very fabric of the wizarding world. Antioch sought power above all else, and his duel with the wizard who killed him in an inn became a cautionary tale about the seduction of invincibility. The Elder Wand, for all its unmatched might, never brought its master peace. Every owner after Antioch followed the same bloody path, each believing they would be the one to break the cycle. Gregorovitch, the wandmaker who claimed it, thought he could study its secrets. Grindelwald thought he could reshape the world. Albus Dumbledore thought he could use it only for the greater good. But the wand does not care about intentions. It only cares about conquest. And so it passed from hand to hand, each time leaving a trail of defeat and death, until it finally rested in the hands of a boy who had no desire for power at all. Cadmus Peverell, the second brother, asked for something far more dangerous than power. He asked for love, for the return of a beloved who had crossed the veil. The Resurrection Stone granted that wish, but only in the cruelest way. It summoned a shade, a cold echo that could not touch the living world. Cadmus learned that death is not a door to be unlocked, but a wall that must be respected. His suicide, a desperate attempt to join the shade he had called, became the stone's first lesson. The stone does not bring back the dead. It brings back the memory of loss. Every descendant who inherited it, from the Gaunts to Voldemort himself, could not see that its true purpose was not to reunite, but to remind. Dumbledore in his youth sought it to undo his own sister's death. He too nearly fell into that same abyss. But Harry, when he finally turned the stone in his fingers in the forest, did not try to hold onto the shades. He spoke to them, drew strength from them, and then let them fade. That was the only way to use the stone without being destroyed. And then there was Ignotus, the third brother, whose request was the simplest and the wisest. He did not ask for power over death or for the return of the dead. He asked only to step aside, to live his life without being pursued. The Cloak of Invisibility, the only Hallow that never betrayed its owner, became the family heirloom of the Potter line. It hid James Potter from the wizarding world's enemies, and then it hid Harry from the eyes of those who sought to destroy him. But the Cloak's true lesson is not about hiding. It is about humility. Ignotus accepted that he would one day die, and he used the Cloak not to escape death forever, but to choose the moment of his departure. He died as an old man, surrounded by family, having lived a full life. Harry, in his final act as Master of Death, did the same. He put on the Cloak to walk into the forest, but he did not wear it to avoid death. He wore it to meet death on his own terms. The story of the Hallows, woven into a children's tale by Beadle the Bard, carries the moral backbone of the entire Harry Potter saga. It is a story about accepting mortality, about understanding that the greatest power lies not in conquering death, but in living bravely and loving deeply. Dumbledore once said that to the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. That is the lesson of the third brother. The first brother sought to defy that adventure. The second brother tried to reverse it. Only the third brother chose to walk alongside it, hand in hand, until the very end. The circle closes in a quiet tomb at Hogwarts. The Elder Wand, its power spent and its lineage ended, lies in the white marble with Dumbledore's body. Harry broke it in the film, but in the book he returned it, trusting that no one would ever disarm the dead. Either way, its reign of violence is over. The Resurrection Stone, a tiny black gem that once held the grief of centuries, lies lost somewhere in the undergrowth of the Forbidden Forest, tangled in roots and fallen leaves. Harry chose not to search for it. He did not want to become like Cadmus, forever reaching for a hand that would never be warm. And the Cloak, the only Hallow that fulfilled its promise without harm, was passed to James Sirius Potter. The cycle of the Peverells continues, but now with an understanding that the Cloak is not a weapon or a prize. It is a gift of grace. This is the legacy of the three brothers. It is not about the objects themselves, but about the choices each brother made. Antioch chose arrogance and died in blood. Cadmus chose grief and died by his own hand. Ignotus chose humility and died in peace. Harry Potter, descendant of Ignotus, faced the same choice. He could have gathered the Hallows and claimed mastery over death. He could have used the Elder Wand to become the most powerful wizard alive. He could have kept the Resurrection Stone to summon his loved ones whenever he felt lonely, but he did none of those things. He understood that the true master of death is not the one who conquers it, but the one who embraces it without fear. The Hallows, then, are a mirror. They reflect the soul of the one who seeks them. For Voldemort, they were a distraction, a side quest that he never completed, because his soul was too broken to unite them. For Dumbledore, they were a temptation that he resisted only in his final years. For Harry, they were a path to a deeper understanding. The tale of the three brothers, told to wizarding children for centuries, turned out to be the key to saving the wizarding world from its greatest threat. Because in that simple story, hidden in the shadows of a bedtime tale, was the answer to the riddle of life and death. That we must not cling to what we cannot keep, but cherish what we have while we have it. And so the legacy of the Peverells comes to rest, not in a vault or a museum, but in the hearts of those who remember the story. The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, the Cloak of Invisibility, each one a lesson, each one a warning, each one a gift, if you know how to receive it. And now, as we close this chapter on the Deathly Hallows, we leave the brothers where they belong. Antioch in the dust of an ancient inn, Cadmus in the shadow of a stone that could not restore, and Ignotus walking quietly, hand in hand with the one who always follows, until the very last step. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, Consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.